Chapter 1. The Dawn of Dreams, Humanity's First Sparks. Long before history had a name, long before cities rose and languages were spoken, there was fire. It flickered against cave walls and danced across sleeping plains, a silent partner. To the earliest of human dreams, in those ancient nights, when darkness swallowed the world, small clusters of people huddled near the warmth of flame. The fire crackled softly, its embers glowing like tiny stars fallen to the earth. Around it, hands moved with a slow, deliberate grace. Fingers calloused from rough stone and sharp bone learned to strike, to carve, to shape. The first tools were not born of luxury or art. They were answers to hunger, to fear, to the endless need to survive another night. A sharpened stone became a spear. A hollowed stick became a vessel for water. Bit by bit, the world bent to the quiet will of those who dared to dream beyond instinct. There were no teachers in those days, only watchers. The child who watched. His father flake a blade from a chunk of flint learned not from words but from wonder. And as generations passed, the simple magic of crafting became the inheritance of every human hand beneath the firelight, humanity's first sparks of ingenuity. Glowed. Each crack of stone, each smoothed edge, was a step away from mere existence and a step toward something more. Something that could not yet be named, but which pulls quietly in every breath. The dream of mastery over the world. The nights were long and the winters were cruel. But as flames danced against the walls of caves, another fire smoldered within the hearts of those gathered there, a fire that no storm or hunger could extinguish. The fire of invention. And so, in the hush of prehistory, humanity's first sparks were struck not with the roar of progress, but with the soft whisper of possibility, whispers of wonder as centuries drifted like mist over mountains and rivers. Human hands grew surer, bolder. What began as survival became the quiet pursuit of understanding. In distant lands, far from the first fires, new centers of wonder began to rise. In the fertile cradle of Mesopotamia, along the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates, people carved the first symbols into clay. Their marks were simple at first, just records of grain or cattle. But behind every mark was a whisper, the idea that knowledge could be captured, held, and shared across the shifting sands of Egypt. Great structures rose toward the heavens. Stone by stone, the impossible took shape. The pyramids were not merely tombs, they were dreams given weight, mathematical precision born from millennia of whispered learning passed from one mind to another, far to the east, in the river valleys. Of China, the pulse of discovery quickened too. They tamed floods with intricate canals. They charted the stars with careful eyes. They molded bronze into tools and bells, each artifact a testament to shared wisdom and the patient layering of dreams. Though oceans and deserts separated them, these ancient civilizations shared something deeper than language or trade. They shared a quiet faith, a belief that knowledge once found could be nurtured, grown, and given to those yet unborn. It was not loud, this sharing. It did not flash like lightning or crash like thunder. It was as soft as a brush against sand, as steady as a hand carving stone. Generation after generation, humanity whispered to itself, build, learn, remember, and in those whispers, the world began to change. The pulse of progress, the journey from flint blades to written words, had taken countless lifetimes. But now, the heart of humanity beat faster. Every small discovery quickened the pace. Where once a tool had served one need, now it sparked many ideas. A simple wheel became not just a means of transport, but the foundation for gears, pulleys, and machines yet unimagined. In the markets of Mesopotamia, merchants weighed goods on balanced scales, blending commerce with early science. In the forests of Europe, smiths coaxed iron from stone, forging stronger tools and weapons. In distant lands, quiet minds watched, wondered and built, progress was not a straight path. It twisted through setbacks and stumbles, through wars and forgotten knowledge. Yet always the pulse continued. Always the dream lived. The Greeks gazed into the stars and named their patterns, weaving mathematics with myth. The Persians mapped vast empires with ink and parchment. The Mayans, deep within the jungles of the Americas, built towering temples aligned perfectly with the cycles of the heavens, each breakthrough, each new tool. Chart, structure was a heartbeat in the long rhythm of human invention. And, though many who made them would never know the true reach of their work, their hands carried forward a dream that would outlive them. The fire that had once flickered low against cave walls now burned across continents. It illuminated temples, libraries, and cities. It fueled the endless, quiet, determined push forward. The pulse of progress was steady. It was patient. It was unstoppable, a sky full of promise when the day's labor was done and the fires burned. Lo, early humans would tilt their faces upward and stare into the vast unknown. Above them, the stars shimmered, distant and untouchable, a sea of endless questions and silent songs. Long before telescopes or mathematics could explain their glow, the stars spoke to the soul. They offered a mirror to the dreams stirring. Quietly within every heart, dreams of reaching, of knowing, of becoming something more. Under those skies, stories were born. Myths of hunters chasing stags across the heavens. Tales of great ships sailing starry seas. Visions of gods and heroes. And endless journeys. The stars were not just lights. They were promises that there was more to learn, more to seek, more to imagine. They hinted that the small hands shaping flint by firelight might one day touch the fabric of the universe itself. As civilizations grew, they charted the stars with careful patience, mapping the cosmos like sailors tracing unseen currents. The constellations became guides for planting and harvest, for travel and ritual. But they remained, above all, a canvas for dreams. And so, beneath a sky full of promise, humanity's journey continued. Every glance upward was a vow that no matter how far the fires of invention carried them, no matter how deep the rivers of progress ran, they would never stop dreaming. The stars watched. The earth turned. And quietly, slowly, beautifully, the dream of humanity moved forward, one small spark at a time. Chapter 2. The Compass and the Guiding Star. Opening the world in the stillness of ancient China, where scholars watched the patterns of the heavens and the flow of rivers, a quiet discovery was made. It did not roar like a new empire or gleam like gold. Instead, it hummed with a gentle, persistent pull, a whisper from the earth itself. Somewhere, a scholar, curious and patient, noticed that a simple stone could move on its own, suspended or placed carefully on water. This lodestone, a naturally magnetized mineral, would turn again and again to the same direction. It was as if the stone knew a secret hidden in the unseen forces of the world. At first, this discovery seemed like a small wonder. It was used for divination, for rituals seeking answers from the mysteries beyond human sight. The lodestone was not yet seen as a guide across physical lands, but as a symbol of something deeper, unseen truths waiting quietly to be found. As the centuries slipped by, scholars shaped their understanding with slow, deliberate hands. They learned to carve thin slivers of lodestone, mounting them on wood or floating them on water. The slivers, like quiet dancers, spun and then settled, always pointing north. This simple pull, steady, silent, and sure, held the power to change the shape of human destiny. Where once people could only trust in the stars above or the landmarks near, now they held in their hands a piece of the earth's own guidance. In the dim glow of early lamps and the hush of ancient libraries, humanity's first compass was born. It was not yet the tool of explorers or adventurers. It was still something fragile, something barely understood. But it was there waiting, like the first breath before a great leap into the unknown. The lodestone's quiet pull had awakened a new possibility, a way to travel, not just by sight or memory, but by trusting something invisible, yet constant. A whisper of direction in a world still full of shadows, sails on the horizon for centuries. Human journeys clung to the edges of the known. Traders crossed familiar deserts, fishermen hugged close to the coasts, and travelers followed well-worn paths carved by generations before them. The world beyond was wide, but its edges seemed wrapped in mystery and fear. Then came the mariners, men who looked at the endless blue of the ocean and saw not a wall, but a doorway, armed now with the knowledge of the compass. Their ships pushed further than ever before, no longer needing to see land or follow the curve of the stars alone. Sailors ventured into open waters. The compass needle, unwavering even in storm and fog, gave them something rare and powerful: confidence. The great wooden ships, their sails swelling with the breath of distant winds, became symbols of a new era. On the horizon, white sails appeared, like ghostly wings against the endless sky. They carried more than goods. They carried hope, fear, ambition, and dreams. In every creak of timber and every snap of canvas there was a story of those who dared to leave the world they knew in search of worlds they had only imagined. Some found distant shores lined with golden sands and lush forests. Others found harsh coasts and turbulent seas. Some never returned at all, swallowed by the vastness they sought to tame. But always the compass remained, a silent companion through it all. It pointed north through stillness and storm, through the glitter of sun on water and the black pitch of midnight seas. It was a guide when the stars were hidden and the shoreline disappeared. It whispered to the mariners, "Keep going," and so they did. Across unknown oceans and uncharted maps, sails chased the horizon. The world grew larger with every voyage, and yet somehow it also grew closer. The compass had opened the ocean's locked gates, and with it, the spirit of exploration was set free. Threads of trade and tale with the world now opening like a great blooming flower. Threads began to weave between lands once thought forever apart. These threads were not made of silk or rope, though many carried goods that gleamed or glowed. They were threads of connection, of trade, of tale, of shared wonder. Caravans that once trudged slowly across deserts now met ships that sailed across oceans. Ports that had been sleepy fishing villages turned into bustling cities of color, sound, and scent. Everywhere, the air buzzed with newness, spices from the east, fabrics from the west, ideas spun from far-off lands. Silk shimmered in the marketplaces of Venice. Cinnamon and cloves floated on the winds of Zanzibar. Gold gleamed in the bazaars of Timbuktu. And along with goods, stories traveled, stories of lands where rivers shone like mirrors and mountains touched the heavens. Merchants became storytellers, carrying news of distant empires and strange creatures. Scholars exchanged ideas that would reshape science, medicine, and art. Explorers brought maps drawn from new hands, bearing place names that tasted unfamiliar on the tongue. In this growing network of exchange, no place remained untouched. A whisper in a Chinese temple might find its echo years later in a European monastery. A ship's cargo from India might inspire a painter in a Dutch village. A single book, carried across deserts and seas, might awaken the mind of a future inventor. The compass had not only pointed the way across oceans, it had pointed the way to each other. Through trade and tale, cultures that once lived in isolation began to weave together, strand by strand, and though conflict and greed sometimes tugged at the fragile threads, there was, always, a deeper current. A longing to know, to understand, to connect. The world was no longer a patchwork of distant islands. It was becoming something new, a tapestry, a light in the dark. In the centuries that followed, the compass became more than a tool for travel. It became a symbol, a quiet reminder that even in the deepest uncertainty, a true path could be found. Sailors kept compasses close, nestled in boxes of wood and brass, their needles trembling slightly with every movement of the ship. Explorers clutched them as they stepped onto unknown shores, where maps ended and imagination began. Merchants trusted them to lead their cargo safely home, and in a quieter way, the compass entered the human heart. It became a metaphor whispered in poems and prayers, that somewhere, even when all seemed lost, a guide would remain. That there was a way forward, even when the way could not be seen. Parents gave compasses to their children, setting off on long journeys. Lovers parted at docks with compasses tucked secretly into satchels. Soldiers carried them into battles, dreaming of the roads that might lead them back to peace. The compass pointed not just to the north, but to possibility, to home, to dreams. In the dark nights of both sea and soul, when the wind howled and the stars hid their faces, the compass remained. It spun sometimes, trembling with doubt, but it always settled again, calm, steady, sure. And so, humanity learned something as vast and deep as the oceans they crossed, that true direction is not always clear, but that it can be trusted to reveal itself in time. The world was bigger now. The maps were fuller. The horizons stretched wide and free. But no matter how far humanity traveled, they carried with them a simple, quiet faith anchored by a small needle that pointed steadily onward, a light in the dark, a promise that somewhere, just ahead, a new shore waited to be found. Chapter 3. The clock and the breath of time, taming the hours. In the cool stone corridors of medieval monasteries, time once moved differently. It was measured not by the swing of a pendulum or the ringing of a bell, but by the slow, steady rhythm of human devotion. Monks rose before dawn and prayed into the night, their days flowing like quiet rivers from one sacred duty to the next. Yet even devotion needed a guide, a way to carve the endless hours into something tangible. In the heart of these monasteries, where candles burned low and parchment whispered beneath careful hands, something extraordinary began to take shape. The mechanical clock. It started with simple ideas: a weight that could fall, a wheel that could turn, a lever that could catch and release in a steady rhythm. No single monk invented it, and no single monastery claimed it. It was a quiet collaboration across many hands, many years, stitched together by necessity and patience. The first clocks were not built for the world outside. They were built for prayer. Their gears and chains turned slowly behind thick stone walls, hidden from view, marking the sacred hours when chants would rise into vaulted ceilings. Imagine a small, dim room, heavy with the scent of wax and old wood. A clock's slow heartbeat echoed there, unseen but deeply felt. The wheels turned with a solemn grace, each tick a reminder that life itself was fleeting, precious, and worthy of careful attention. These early timekeepers were imperfect. Their gears slipped. Their weights pulled unevenly. Sometimes the rhythm faltered. But still, they represented something powerful, an attempt to tame the intangible, to hold on to the passing of time with hands that could only ever borrow it. In those silent halls, where stone met sky and prayer met breath, the first true clocks began to breathe. And with them, humanity's relationship with time began to change forever. The heartbeat of Taunsis, the knowledge of mechanical clocks grew. It slipped beyond the monastery walls. The quiet rhythm that had once marked only prayer soon became the heartbeat of entire towns across Europe. From busy marketplaces to quiet villages, great towers rose. In their heights, new clocks were mounted, larger, louder, and proud. There, faces gleamed against the sky, their hands circling with solemn patience. And at their core, intricate systems of gears and weights worked tirelessly, Pulling time forward one heartbeat at a time, each hour, a bell would ring out across the rooftops. The sound rolled over fields and rivers, calling merchants to their stalls, craftsmen to their workshops, and children to their lessons. It was a sound that tied a town together, stitching every life into the same invisible cloth. Where once people moved to the rhythms of sun and season, they now moved to the measured ticking of the clock. Morning prayers, midday meals, evening closures all found their place within this new, steady drumbeat. The clock tower became more than a tool. It became a symbol. It stood at the center of life, marking both celebration and sorrow. Bells tolled for weddings and funerals, for victories and losses, for the opening of markets and the closing of city gates. In the quiet before dawn, a single chime might echo across empty streets, reminding even the last watchman that he was not alone in the passing hours. In the heat of midday, a flurry of bells could mingle with the chatter of crowds and the laughter of children, tying 100 different moments into one shared breath. The clocks gave towns a shared rhythm, a shared sense of being. And as their hands turned steadily through rain and shine, war and peace, they whispered a gentle truth, that no matter how different our paths, we are all carried forward by the same river of time, time's gentle weight with the gift of measured. Ours came a quiet burden, one that settled slowly, like snow upon a field before the clock. Life moved in broader strokes. The sun rose and set. The seasons shifted. The harvest came and went. Time was a vast landscape, stretching wide and open. But now it became something closer, tighter, more present. Hours were counted. Minutes were marked. Moments were weighed. Work became more structured. Markets opened and closed at appointed times. Contracts were signed with dates and deadlines. Even leisure with a faint pressure of the ticking hand. A meeting was not simply in the morning, but at the third hour. A journey was no longer sometime next season, but on the appointed day. For many, this new rhythm brought a sense of security. There was comfort in knowing when and where to be, in planning days like neat rows in a field. But for others, the weight of time could be heavy. The clock's relentless movement allowed little room for wandering thoughts or lingering goodbyes. Farmers felt the pull of planting and harvest measured against deadlines, not just weather. Artisans hurried their craft to meet the expectations of buyers. Students bent over their books, not by candlelight alone, but by scheduled study hours. And yet, there was beauty in this new measure, too. Time became something to be shaped. People began to think not only about surviving the hours, but using them, crafting moments into songs, into stories, into dreams. Artists painted under the steady ticking of studio clocks. Builders raised cathedrals stone by stone each day. A measured gift, the gentle weight of time pressed down. Yes, but it also lifted humanity upward. It asked a quiet question of every soul. What will you do with your hours? And slowly, steadily, the answers began to fill the world with new wonders, echoes of the Horglasty early clocks, with their heavy gears and ringing bells, carried more than just the measure of days. They carried a new understanding, that every tick was a step forward, a breath closer to the unknown future. Each hour that passed was an echo, a soft drumbeat through the corridors of history. It rang through the alleys of London, the canals of Venice, the quiet courtyards of Paris. It stirred farmers to their fields, scholars to their books, lovers to their letters. The hourglass, with its slipping sands, had long been a symbol of time's passage, gentle, inevitable, fleeting. Now the mechanical clock added a new voice to that song, a voice of movement, of momentum, of endless possibility, and just as the clocks grew more precise, so too did humanity's dreams. Inventors began to measure not just hours but minutes and then seconds. Scientists charted the heavens with finer calculations. Explorers timed their journeys with new certainty. The very heartbeat of discovery grew quicker, sharper, alive. But even in the hum of invention, the echo of the old hourglass remained. It reminded all who listened that time, no matter how carefully measured, could never be hoarded or reclaimed. It moved forward, always forward, carrying hopes and regrets. Alike, clocks ticked in city squares and quiet studies. They ticked in ships crossing stormy seas and in lonely outposts on the edge of empires. Everywhere, their steady breath marked humanity's steps toward a future as vast and unknown as the stars. And so, the clock born in silence, nurtured. In prayer, raised above bustling towns, became a companion to every human dream. A witness to every beginning and every ending, its hands moved steadily on, weaving the hours into history, the minutes into memory, and the seconds into the soft, endless song of time itself. Chapter 4. The Printing Press and the Tide of Words. A world awakens. In a small workshop in Mainz, Germany, a quiet revolution began not with shouts or armies, but with the careful click of type against type, and the patient press of ink onto paper. The year was around 1440, and Johannes Gutenberg, a man of vision and steady hands, was at work on something that would outlive kings and kingdoms. In his modest space, filled with the scent of ink and the weight of ambition, movable type took form. Before Gutenberg, books were born slowly, each page painstakingly written by hand. A single manuscript could take months, even years, to complete. Knowledge was rare, and it belonged mostly to the wealthy, the clergy, and the crowned. Stories, laws, and discoveries lived in fragile copies, guarded behind stone walls and locked shelves. But here, in the dim light of Gutenberg's workshop, a new future stirred. Movable type, small, interchangeable pieces carved carefully. From metal made it possible to assemble pages quickly, to repeat them, to spread them. The press itself, built with heavy wood and simple mechanics, was a marvel of quiet strength. Ink was rolled onto the raised letters. Paper was laid with care. And with the pull of a lever, an idea was pressed into permanence. It was not loud. It was not fast. The first books printed famously, the grand Bibles, took time, patience, and back-breaking work. But compared to the slow crawl of handwritten copies, it was a tidal wave. In Gutenberg's hands, words were no longer fleeting. They were no longer trapped in singular volumes. They became endless, reproducible, immortal. In that quiet workshop, with ink-staining fingers and ambition-staining hearts, the world of ideas broke free from its ancient chains. A breath was taken, one that would never be drawn back. Pages for hungry mind sauce. The press found its rhythm. So too did the hunger for knowledge quicken across Europe. First, the printed books remained rare, precious treasures. Rich merchants and noble families prized them for their beauty and novelty. Yet slowly, steadily, the reach of the printed word crept beyond marble halls and golden libraries. In candlelit rooms above workshops, and within stone cottages by the fields, ordinary people began to gather around printed pages. Books, once too expensive for any but the elite, became accessible to the curious craftsman, the diligent apprentice, the dreaming farmer. Scriptoria, where monks once labored over a single manuscript for years, were replaced by bustling print. Shops. New markets sprang up where books were sold alongside cloth and spices. Traveling peddlers tucked small pamphlets into their packs, carrying stories and news from town to town. The ripple of literacy began, slow but unstoppable. Children learned their letters not by memorizing ancient verses alone, but by running their fingers across fresh pages. Young women, who once could only hope to hear stories told aloud, now held their own books beneath their arms, cradling them like treasures, candlelight became the companion of many a midnight reader, its soft flicker casting long shadows on walls as minds raced with new ideas. Rooms once silent at night now buzzed quietly with whispered readings, discussions, and dreams. With every page turned, the walls that had divided knowledge began to crumble. The common dreamer could now taste philosophy, poetry, science, and faith. The press fed not just the mind, but the soul's deepest craving. To understand, to question, to imagine, Gutenberg had created a tool. But it was the people, hungry and hopeful, who gave it its true power. The world was stirring. And in that stir, a new dawn began to rise, the spark of reformation. It did not take long for bold hearts to recognize the power the press had placed. Within their reach. In the past, new ideas had traveled slowly, carried on foot across uncertain roads, whispered from teacher to student. Now they traveled at the speed of ink. When Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg in 1517, it was not the act alone that set the world aflame. It was the press. Luther's words printed and spread in hundreds. Then thousands of copies flew across Europe faster than any army could chase them down. For the first time, a single voice could rise above the boundaries of kingdom and church. For the first time, a thought could reach a stranger's heart across oceans of distance and difference. The Reformation was not born only of religious fervor. It was born of words, of pages that crossed borders hidden in wagons, of pamphlets tucked into sleeves and read in secret, of ideas that slipped through cracks in stone walls and found fertile ground in waiting minds. Rulers who once believed they could silence opposition by imprisoning a man or burning a book found themselves chasing shadows. The printed word, once loosed, could not be so easily caught. Other revolutions soon followed. Political movements, scientific debates, philosophical awakenings all fed on the same river of ink. The spark ignited by the press was not a single flame. It was 1,000 candles lit across the world, each one passing its light to another. The world's great halls of power had been built on control of land, of wealth, of minds. Now, in printed letters, the control began to slip away, carried off like autumn leaves in a rising wind. The press had given humanity not just a voice, but a chorus. And no decree or king's command could silence it again. A legacy and letters as centuries turned. The printing press continued its quiet work not with fanfare, but with the steady pulse of pages pressed, books bound, and minds awakened. It gave birth to an age of exploration, of science, of democracy. It carried poems into parlors, philosophies into universities, blueprints into workshops. It whispered dreams to the lonely, strength to the powerless, and hope to the weary. From Gutenberg's press flowed Shakespeare's plays, Galileo's revelations, Newton's laws, and Mary Wollstonecraft's calls for equality. It carried the struggles of revolutions and the ponderings of peace. It told the stories of people who would otherwise have been forgotten: farmers, mothers, dreamers, children. The printed word became the heartbeat of modern civilization. It shaped cultures, nations, identities. It allowed ideas to outlive their creators, to ripple forward into generations yet unborn. Libraries rose like cathedrals, filled with the collective memory of humanity. Newspapers stacked themselves in busy corners, carrying news from every corner of a growing world. Magazines bloomed with art, fashion, and invention. Novels crept into homes, bringing whole new worlds within the span of a page. In every letter pressed to paper, there was a silent echo of Gutenberg's workshop, of that first breath of possibility when movable type clicked into place, and though time would bring new inventions, radio waves, glowing screens, endless streams of information, the soul of the press would endure. For even now, somewhere, a reader sits in soft light, a book open across their lap. their fingers tracing lines written by someone they have never met in a place they have never seen, across a gulf of years they have never lived. In that small, tender moment, the legacy lives on. A tide of words, endless and unstoppable, carrying humanity forward, one quiet page at a time. Chapter 5. The camera and the stolen moment. Holding time still in a quiet room in early 19th century France, Joseph Nic Fornipsi sat before a polished pewter plate, sunlight streaming through a nearby window. Outside, rooftops slumbered under a soft sky. Inside, a revolution was stirring, not of politics or machines, but of memory itself. For years, Nipsey had dreamed of capturing light, not just basking in its warmth or painting its reflection, but trapping it, making it stay, making it remember. He mixed chemicals with careful hands, creating a sensitive surface on the pewter plate. He positioned it to face the open air, allowing sunlight to bathe the metal. Hours passed. The light, patient and steady, imprinted itself onto the plate. Slowly, imperceptibly, a ghostly image began to form. It was not a sharp image. It lacked the vividness of reality. But it was their faint outlines of a rooftop, a courtyard, the slant of shadows. It was the world, frozen in its breath, captured in a single stolen moment. Nipsey had not simply taken a picture. He had reached into time and held it still. This first photograph, now known as View from the Window at La Grasse, was blurry, grainy, and small. Yet in its quiet haze, it carried a profound promise that fleeting instants, once thought lost forever, could be kept, cherished, and remembered with. That pewter plate light itself had been coaxed into a memory. And humanity's relationship with time shifted gently. Forever, faces frozen in time. The magic of Nipsey's work did not remain hidden for long. Across Europe and America, inventors and dreamers raced to refine the craft, eager to make moments stand still more clearly, more quickly, more beautifully. Soon, photography became not just a scientific wonder, but a part of daily life. Daguerreotypes, delicate images fixed on silvered plates, appeared first. They captured faces with an intimacy never before possible. Before photography, family memories lived in paintings which few could afford, or in the fragile theater of memory itself. A child's face, a mother's smile, a lover's gaze. These were things that time blurred, softened, and eventually erased, but now the camera offered a kind of immortality. Families dressed carefully for portraits, their finest clothes pressed and their hair combed with tender precision. They sat still for long minutes, the camera's eye patiently watching. Behind every stiff pose and serious expression was a shared hope that this moment, this gathering of hearts, would survive the years. Sepia tones wrapped these early photographs in a kind of gentle warmth, as if time itself had kissed the images before handing them down. A photograph could hold the memory of a grandmother's wrinkled hands, a son's proud stance, a father's weathered face lined with years of love and labor. No longer would these memories rely solely on fragile human recall. Now they could be passed from hand to hand, generation to generation, tucked into albums, hidden in lockets, framed above hearths. Photography gave the ordinary person a treasure, once reserved for kings and noble houses, the power to remember exactly someone they loved. In the silent faces captured by early cameras, there is a tenderness that even time cannot erase. A whisper that says, I was here. I loved. I lived. A lens on the world as photography became faster, cheaper, and more portable. Its gaze turned outward from parlor rooms to battlefields, from quiet portraits to the thundering sweep of history. In the dust of wars, photographers followed, soldiers with heavy cameras slung over their shoulders. They captured not the grand speeches of generals, but the tired faces of young men, the battered ruins of cities, the silent sorrow of fields turned to graves for the first time, the horrors of conflict were not left to the imagination. They were printed on pages, carried to kitchens and cafes, where ordinary people could look into the eyes of war. Cameras also found their way to celebrations, to coronations and fairs, to ship launches and village gatherings. A child's first steps, a bride's shy smile, a market bustling under festival flags, these, too, were captured, frozen for all to see. Photography became a silent witness to humanity's great tapestry, its triumphs and tragedies, its moments of joy and its endless search for meaning. Each click of the shutter was a small, patient act of remembrance. Each developed image was a quiet promise. You will not be forgotten across continents and oceans. Photographers documented the changing world, glaciers melting, cities rising, forests falling. They became the keepers of landscapes as well as people, guardians of moments too vast or too delicate to describe in words. In every frame, there lived a breath of life, a reminder that history was not just events in books, but countless lived moments, each precious, each fleeting. The lens offered not just sight, but understanding, a way to see and to feel the passage of time. The frame of memorials, the years unfurled into decades. Photography seeped deeper into the everyday rhythm of life. It moved from grand studios to small handheld cameras, from heavy glass plates to rolls of flexible film, and no longer reserved for the wealthy or the patient. Photography became a part of the human story at every level. A father snapped a picture of his daughter spinning in a field. A traveler captured the sunset from a crowded train window. Friends laughed into the lens at summer fairs, their joy preserved like butterflies beneath glass. Photographs filled shoeboxes, lined family albums, tucked themselves into wallets. They became companions in lonely hours, relics of love long past. Snapshots of days that seemed, at the time, ordinary but later proved golden. In weddings and funerals, in first days of school and quiet Sunday afternoons, the camera stood as a silent witness. It asked for nothing but a moment's trust, and in return, it offered a small miracle, the chance to hold memory in hand. Photography did not stop the march of time. The faces in the frames still grew older, the landscapes still changed. But it gave humanity something gentle and precious, a frame through which to visit the past whenever the heart ached for it. A black and white photo could summon the scent of an old kitchen, the creak of a porch swing, the warmth of a lost embrace. A faded snapshot could bridge oceans of time and loss, bringing back a voice, a glance, a laugh that might otherwise have vanished. The camera, born of light and patience, became more than an invention. It became a vessel for love, for memory, for the sacredness of simply being alive. Today, as millions of photographs are taken every hour across the world, the spirit of that first pewter plate endures. In every click, there is wonder. In every image, there is a whispered promise. This moment matters, and somewhere, in a quiet drawer or a dusty album, a photograph waits ready to carry someone home through the soft corridors of memory, back to a moment when the world held its breath, and a single heart said, "I remember." Chapter 6. The Battery and the Hidden Spark. Power in silence. In a quiet workshop in Italy, surrounded by curious tools and sheets of metal, Alessandro Volta set about solving a mystery that had danced on the edges of human understanding. For centuries, IT was the late 1700s. Scientists had long known about the strange tingling shocks from electric fish, or the spark that leapt from certain metals. But no one had yet found a way to call upon this invisible force, to summon it at will and hold it steady. Volta, patient and precise, believed the answer might be simple layers. He took discs of copper and zinc and stacked them one atop the other each separated by pieces of cloth soaked in salt water. It looked like little more than a pile of coins left out in the rain. But it hummed with a quiet, unseen life. He called it the voltaic pile, a modest name for a profound creation. When wires were touched to either end, a current flowed, not a spark that flickered and died, but a steady, silent river of energy. For the first time, humanity could tap into the invisible currents that coursed through the world, not by chance, but by design. In that moment, the silent language of electricity was no longer just a curiosity of storms and shocks. It was a force that could be captured, shaped, and in time unleashed. Volta's discovery did not roar or blaze. It whispered. It waited. But its power was undeniable. The voltaic pile, small enough to fit in a man's hands, contained the seeds of a future bright beyond imagining, a future where the hidden spark would light cities, connect continents, and breathe life into machines yet undreamed. And it had all begun here. In a small workshop, with simple metals stacked in quiet hope, the hum of possibility with Volta's invention, the door to a new world swung open on silent hinges. At first, the applications were humble. Scientists and inventors, their imaginations stirred, began to play with this steady source of electricity. They experimented, they built, they dreamed. Early telegraphs crackled to life, carrying messages across distances once thought vast. A tap here, a click there, and a letter traveled faster than any horse or ship could carry it. The world began to shrink, stitched together by invisible threads of power. Tinkerers built small motors, their copper wires trembling with potential. Arc lamps flared to life, their blinding glow startling in a world still ruled by flame. Laboratories buzzed quietly with excitement as coils and magnets danced to the new rhythm of steady current. Each discovery felt like a breath of possibility. Each new device was a whisper from the future. Though the earliest batteries were weak and short-lived by today's standards, they carried an idea stronger than any current. That energy could be stored, carried, and used on command. The voltaic pile and the countless improvements that followed turned electricity from a rare natural wonder into a companion of human progress. It was no longer enough to witness lightning in a storm. Now humanity could hold a piece of that wild force in their hands, gentle, controllable, ready to shape the world anew. The hum of possibility grew louder with every passing year, a quiet symphony of invention gathering strength, waiting to burst into the full chorus of the electric age. Energy in the shadows as decades passed. The presence of electricity and the quiet power of batteries seeped into the corners of daily life. At first, it was a luxury, a curiosity for the wealthy or the learned. Early battery-powered devices were delicate and rare, more scientific marvel than household tool. But slowly, the hidden spark wove itself into the fabric of ordinary existence. In the hands of artists and scholars, small batteries powered delicate instruments, early hearing aids, mechanical toys, experimental lighting for grand theaters. Surgeons used battery-powered tools to explore new realms of healing, lighting their work with a steadier glow than candle or gas could offer. Batteries began to power time itself. Watches once wound by hand were replaced with devices humming softly with stored energy, their hands sweeping gracefully around faces that marked not just hours but human ingenuity. Electric lights, powered first by batteries, began to blink in windows and atop lampposts. No longer would night hold complete dominion over the world. Humanity, with a little stored power in its pocket, could push back the dark, but even as the glow grew, much of the energy remained invisible, hidden in the walls, beneath the floors, within the tiny compartments of daily tools. The marvel was no less profound for being unseen. Children flipped switches without a thought, unaware of the journey that electricity took to reach their fingertips. Trains ran faster, factories hummed, homes warmed against the cold. all thanks to a force most would never see, but all would come to depend upon. Energy had become a companion moving in the background of life, steady, faithful, transformative, and always at its heart was the simple miracle Volta had shown the world, that even the smallest spark, carefully captured, could light the way forward, a glow beyond the wires. From the humble voltaic pile grew vast networks of wires, stations, and grids. Weaving across continents like glowing veins, the small currents first coaxed from copper and zinc multiplied, scaled, and surged. Cities blazed with light. Factories roared with electric motors. Homes sang softly with the steady buzz of powered life. Batteries evolved, too, from simple stacks of metal to complex chemical marvels. They grew smaller, stronger, lighter. They powered telephones and radios, toys and tools, cameras and clocks. Eventually, they would power cars, computers, even dreams of distant stars. Yet even as energy grids expanded, even as cables crisscrossed mountains and oceans, the battery retained its quiet magic. In places far from the hum of cities, on mountaintops, deep under the sea, out in the silent vastness of space, it was still the battery, holding its silent charge, that kept the spark alive, today, from the heart of a bustling metropolis. To the solitary hum of a spacecraft drifting between worlds, batteries beat like hidden hearts. They store more than electricity. They store possibility. They carry the whisper of Volta's workshop, that light can be captured, that power can be tamed, that dreams can be kindled in the palm of a hand. The glow that once flickered uncertainly on a pewter plate now shines from a million points across the world and beyond. It powers voices, images, stories, and journeys unimaginable to the world Volta knew, and yet, at its core, the legacy remains simple, a quiet marvel at the forces unseen, a gentle wonder at the spark that lives within, a promise glowing softly in the dark, that even the faintest spark, if nurtured with care and curiosity, can light the future. Chapter 7. The telephone and the voice. Unbound. Distant hearts made near. It was a soft hum at first, barely a tremble in the stillness of the lab. Alexander Graham Bell leaned over the rough wooden table, breath held tight, heart fluttering, like a caged bird. Beside him, a tangle of wires, coils, and curiosity. Then it happened, a faint crackle, a thread of sound traveling a path invisible to the eye. Bell's voice, uncertain but determined, found its way across the wire. "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you." Simple words, carried by nothing but invisible pulses, stitched together across a fragile electric current. In that moment, the vast, aching distance that had always stood between human hearts began to collapse. For the first time, one could speak and be heard across a space too wide for the naked voice to cross. The telephone was not born with a roar, but with a whisper. A delicate sound, tentative and small, promising more than its creators could fully understand. It was not just technology. It was hope wrapped in wire, longing carried by current, a bridge where none had existed before. News of Bell's invention spread slowly at first, like ripples on a pond. Few understood it, fewer trusted it. Yet, something stirred deep within people's hearts. The idea that your voice, your own voice, could travel miles, threading through the quiet air to reach someone else, felt nothing short of magic. And so the telephone entered the world not with grand fanfare, but with a quiet, persistent promise. The distances that once separated us could grow smaller, softer, more human. Lines of love and laborious, more voices ventured onto the wires. The world realized it needed more than inventions, it needed caretakers. Enter the switchboard operators, often young women, seated row by row before towering boards, lit with blinking signals. Their hands danced deftly among cords and jacks, weaving together the patchwork quilt of human connection. They were unseen, but essential guardians of conversations that fluttered across cities and countryside. Every day they stitched together the fabric of life. A mother calling her son in a distant town, a merchant arranging supplies, a nervous young man, heart hammering, reaching for the voice of a beloved many miles away. Every connection they made carried the weight of someone's need, someone's story. In quiet rooms humming with the low murmur of countless calls, these operators became the unseen pulse of society. Their fingers flew without falter, voices steady and polite, even as the demands of the growing telephone network pressed ever harder. Yet their role was not mechanical. It was deeply human. They bore witness to love confessed, to grief shared, to everyday words that carried extraordinary meaning. They heard the first "I love you," spoken across miles, the desperate pleas for help, the laughter of friends reunited by sound alone, each plug, each wire, each soft-spoken, connecting. You now was an act of invisible service. In their hands, cities grew closer, hearts leaned nearer, and the cold walls of isolation began to crumble, one call at a time, the nearness of faraway, every new connection. The world itself seemed to shift. Once, distance had been a silent barrier, an ocean of separation between friends, lovers, families. Now, a simple turn of a crank, a few moments of patient waiting, could bring a beloved voice to life in your ear. Loneliness, once a constant companion of those separated by land and sea, found itself softened. Lovers penned fewer anxious letters, knowing a phone call could hear the tremor of affection in a real-time hello. Families who had scattered to chase dreams in distant cities could hear the warmth in each other's laughter without waiting months. For a handwritten note, entire relationships blossomed through the wires. Courtships, once formal and slow, found new rhythms in nightly conversations. Parents soothed crying children from afar, their voices reaching over miles to wipe unseen tears. Soldiers called home from distant battlefields, their voices frayed with longing but alive, threading hope into the hearts of those waiting. The telephone shrank the world in ways few inventions ever had. Not by speeding our bodies across space, but by letting our words and emotions travel freely, unburdened by roads, rivers, or borders. IT made the faraway near. It folded the map of the world inward, so that two distant hearts could rest side by side, joined not by touch, but by the tender miracle of sound, echoes of a callant time. The hand-cranked telephones gave way to sleeker devices, rotary dials, spinning lazily under patient fingers. Wires grew into networks, stretching across countries, then across oceans, until the world itself seemed stitched together by an unseen web of connection. And yet, despite the changes, the brighter plastics, the switch from chords to signals, the arrival of touch-tone buttons and satellite links, the essence of the telephone remained the same. It was, and would always be, a vessel for longing, for love, for belonging. As the 20th century unfurled its restless wings, telephones found their place on kitchen counters, in office cubicles, on bedside tables glowing softly in the dark. Children whispered secrets to friends after bedtime, cradling the receiver with a giddy sense of rebellion. Long-distance lovers fell asleep to the sound of each other's breathing, connected by nothing but a slim line of copper and devotion. Even as the shape of the telephone changed, its soul remained tenderly constant. The first nervous whispers that crossed bells, trembling wires still echoed, now magnified through sleek smartphones and glowing screens. Today, we carry our telephones not as distant devices, but as extensions of our hearts. We cradle them, we whisper into them, we send our voices hurtling across invisible waves to the ones we miss, the ones we love, the ones we ache to reach, and so the whisper through the wire endures. It sings through fiber optics and dances across satellites. It flickers to life in late-night calls and quiet check-ins, in hurried goodbyes and tender goodnights. The world, once so wide and empty, now hums with countless voices reaching for each other in the dark. A quiet, enduring symphony begun. With one whisper, one call, and the eternal longing to be near. Chapter 8. The Phonograph and the Song-Preserved Sound That Never Dies. It began with a whisper against tinfoil, a trembling voice, delicate and unsure, finding its way into history. In a small, cluttered workshop filled with the scent of oil and metal, Thomas Edison leaned over a strange contraption. A cylinder wrapped in crinkled foil turned slowly under a trembling stylus. As Edison spoke into the device, his words pressed tiny, invisible grooves into the surface. It was a fragile idea, one that many thought impossible. That sound, as fleeting and weightless as breath itself, could somehow be caught and played again when Edison turned the crank once more. The foil shivered and a voice, his own, crackled into the room. It was distorted, imperfect, and thin, but it was there. Sound, once believed to vanish into the air forever, had been captured. It had been given a second life. The phonograph did not shout its arrival. It entered the world with the same quiet, awe that fills a room after a miracle. For the first time, humanity could touch the past, hear again the laughter, the words, the melodies that had always slipped away too quickly to hold. It was not just a mechanical achievement. It was the preservation of feeling. A mother's lullaby, a child's giggle, a whispered promise. All these things could now be kept, revisited, and cherished beyond the moment they were made. In that small, dim workshop, a needle traced the first fragile note of forever, melodies in every home soon. The magic of the phonograph drifted beyond Edison's workshop and into the warm hearths of homes around the world. Families would gather in parlors at twilight, drawing closer as the machine, often polished like fine furniture, spun its wonders. A simple crank, a gentle placement of the needle, and the room would fill with music. Sweet, crackling melodies wrapped the air, soaring opera arias, lilting folk songs, the tender hum of lullabies once sung only by a mother to her child. It was as if distant lands had folded themselves into the small living rooms and parlors of ordinary people. Songs born in faraway places now lived just a fingertip away. The pulse of cities, the rhythms of countryside dances, the hymns of distant churches, all were carried by the humble phonograph. The experience was almost sacred. Chairs were drawn near, lamps were dimmed. Children sat cross-legged on worn rugs, eyes wide with wonder as the voices of unseen singers floated into their lives. Elders leaned back in armchairs, feeling the melodies stir old memories and distant dreams. Each record, each song, brought the world closer together. It bridged not just physical distances, but the spaces between generations, between hearts that beat to different tempos. The phonograph became not merely entertainment, but an instrument of connection, a silent partner to love stories, family dinners, and quiet moments by the fire. In these homes, the fragile beauty of sound was no longer lost to the wind. It lived softly and eternally, cradled by spinning discs and the attentive ears of those who understood that even the simplest melody could echo forever. Voices of proverbial music, the phonograph captured another kind of miracle, the voices of those who otherwise would have faded into silence. Great speeches, filled with passion and purpose, found new life spinning in tight spirals of shellac. The words of leaders, poets, and dreamers, words that had once stirred crowds in city squares or whispered hope in quiet gatherings, were now etched into memory itself. A man's voice, filled with urgency, could now leap across decades. A woman's song, bright with youth, could sing long after the years had gentled her spirit. The phonograph became a vessel of memory, holding tightly to the precious things that time had always claimed without mercy. It was not only the grand and famous, whose voices were preserved. In quiet moments, ordinary people too recorded messages for loved ones, simple greetings, heartfelt confessions, laughter tumbling out without restraint. Each recording a tiny time capsule, a fragile echo of life lived. These captured voices were tender gifts for the future. They offered proof that someone had been there, that they had laughed, sung, cried, and dreamed. In a world where memory had always been tied to fading stories and imperfect recollection, the phonograph offered something rare, a chance to listen again. To hear a voice long after the speaker had gone. To be reminded of love, of joy, of presence. Carried not by fragile memory alone, but by the steady grooves of a record, the gentle whisper of a needle tracing history. And so, in parlors and attics, in libraries and museums, voices once thought lost spoke again, soft and unwavering. Carried by the phonograph, they defied silence. They became voices of forever, the sound of eternity. As time wound onward, technology evolved. The wax cylinders gave way to flat discs, then to vinyl, magnetic tape, and digital files. Yet through each transformation, the spirit of the phonograph endured. At its heart, the phonograph was not just a machine. It was a promise that no beautiful sound would have to disappear forever, that a child's first words, a lover's song, a nation's triumphs could all be preserved. To be heard not just today, but tomorrow, and long after the tomorrow after that. Today, as we listen to ancient recordings crackling through headphones or remastered into clarity, we are touching a thread that stretches unbroken across time. We can close our eyes and hear a voice from a century ago, a woman singing softly to a loved one, a statesman rallying a weary crowd, a jazz musician lifting spirits on a smoky night, the sound that was once captured by tin foil and trembling hands now rides on invisible waves, through air, through wires, through servers humming in distant places. Yet still, it remains the same, a fragile human echo made immortal. The phonograph showed us that sound was not as fleeting as we once believed, that it could live beyond the breath that made it, that it could carry memory, emotion, history not in dusty books or fading photographs alone, but in the living, breathing vibration of sound. And so, when we press play, whether on an ancient record player or a sleek digital device, we are part of that same eternal story. We listen not just to music or words. We listen to life itself, captured and set free. The song preserved is not just a song. It is proof that we were here, that we sang, we spoke, we lived. And through the simple grace of a needle and a spinning disc, we always will. Chapter 9. The Light Bulb and the End of Night, Lighting Humanity's Dreams. In a small, dimly lit workshop crowded with glass tubes, copper wires, and fragile hopes, Thomas Edison leaned closer to a tiny glass bulb, his hands steady despite the long hours, carefully adjusted a filament so thin it seemed almost imaginary. The world had known light before, of course fire, oil lamps, gaslight, but none were gentle, safe, or enduring enough to chase back the night completely. Each method flickered, smoked, or burned with heavy cost. Darkness had always returned, stubborn and strong. Edison's dream was different. He wanted a light that could bloom gently from the dark and stay, unbroken, undemanding. But dreams, even small ones, come with endless trials. Failure after failure had marked his path, filaments that burned too hot, that crumbled too quickly, that blinked out before a human breath could be drawn. Still, he persisted. Again and again, he tried, coaxing materials to behave, teasing brilliance from resistance. Until one evening, as the sun slipped away and the workshop deepened into shadow, a filament of carbonized bamboo shimmered within the bulb and did not die. It glowed. Soft, warm, steady, not a fire to fear, not a flame to feed, but a quiet star captured in glass, a private sunrise against the pressing dark dot. In that instant, the future shifted. Night would no longer be the master of human hours. Dreams would stretch beyond sunset. Possibility would spill over the edges of the day. The light bulb had arrived, not with a blinding flash, but with a patient, stubborn, everlasting glow, a small defiance against the ancient rule of darkness. Cities alive with light. It did not take long for this quiet revolution to step beyond the walls of Edison's workshop and into the open arms of the world. At first, electric. Light entered homes cautiously, one room at a time, one street at a time. But soon it poured across cities like a rising tide. Lamps flickered to life along cobblestone roads and busy squares. Their steady brilliance stitched stars into the very fabric of Earth, constellations mapped by human hands. The world after sundown changed forever. Streets once cloaked in fear and uncertainty now gleamed with a soft golden certainty. Children skipped rope under lamplight. Merchants stayed open into the evenings. Lovers strolled along riverbanks lit by gentle halos instead of harsh torches. Or smoky flames. In theaters, performances stretched late into the night. In factories, night shifts grew possible, humming with new energy. The edges of life, once constrained by darkness, now stretched wider, deeper, cities pulsed with new rhythms. The barriers between day and night blurred, and humanity bold, tireless, curious stepped into the illuminated hours with wonder. From New York to London, from Paris to Tokyo, the earth wore a new necklace of glowing pearls at night. Seen from the hills, the cities shimmered like living things, breathing and blinking in delicate, tireless patterns. The light bulb had not simply chased away the night. It had invited humanity to dream more, do more, be more. Well, after the sun had set, the price of brilliance, but every new light cast new shadows. As electric light spread, so too did rivalries, ambitions, and the high costs of forging a new world. Beneath the warm glow of lamps and bulbs, fortunes rose and sometimes crumbled. Edison himself, once crowned the wizard of Menlo Park, found no smooth road ahead. Others, too, raced to harness the magic of electricity. Nikola Tesla, George Westinghouse, and countless engineers and inventors whose dreams often collided more fiercely than the currents they studied. The so-called war of currents sparked and flared, with Edison championing direct current, while Tesla and Westinghouse advocated for alternating current, a method better suited to light entire cities. It was not just a technical battle, it was a clash of visions, of pride, of futures imagined in very different ways. Money flowed, lawsuits bloomed, and reputations wavered. Empires built on electricity soared and collapsed. Behind every glowing bulb in a quiet home stood years of bitter contests, sleepless nights, and broken partnerships. Yet, even through the chaos, the light endured. People did not care, in the end, about the tangled wires of corporate struggle. They cared for the steady lamp by the bedside, the glowing street corner where neighbors paused to chat, the softly lit classrooms where young minds opened like flowers at dawn. Brilliance, it seemed, had its price. But it also had its rewards. Quiet, everyday moments transformed forever by a light that asked only to be noticed, trusted, and shared, a beacon of hope over time. The electric light became something even deeper than convenience or spectacle. It became a companion through every darkened hour. In lonely kitchens late at night, single bulbs burned softly as parents sat and worried over unpaid bills or faraway children. In hospitals, small lights blinked steadily above bedsides where hope flickered uncertainly. In libraries, reading lamps bent golden halos over ancient texts and fresh ideas. In every place touched by electricity, Light became a silent partner to humanity's greatest struggles and quietest triumphs. A solitary bulb swinging gently in a miner's helmet lit the way to life-saving work deep underground. A lamp in a child's bedroom stood guard against the monsters that only darkness can breed. A lighthouse beam, far brighter than ever before, swept across stormy seas to call lost sailors home. Even in the darkest times, through wars, depressions, disasters, the light remained. Small, stubborn, unwavering dot, it reminded people that night could be softened, that darkness was not absolute. It whispered of perseverance, of hope that refused to die, of dreams that stretched their hands farther than fear could reach. Today, though we often take it for granted, the electric light remains one of humanity's purest victories. It is the soft glow in a window that promises someone is home, the street lamp that makes a midnight walk feel safe, the tiny light above a hospital bed that says, "You're not alone." It is the dream of light made real, one filament, one spark, one shining moment at a time, an endless, tireless companion, born from countless failures, endless hope, and the courage to believe that even the oldest darkness could be undone. And in every lamp, every bulb, every golden thread stretched across the night, the spirit of that first fragile glow endures, lighting humanity's dreams forever. Chapter 10. The Sewing Machine and the Stitched Dream Threads of Progress. In a quiet room, beneath the faint glow of a lamp, Elias Howe bent over a strange, delicate machine. His hands, roughened by work, but steady with purpose, guided thread. Through an intricate arrangement of gears, levers, and a sharp, slender needle, the sewing machine was not born in a single moment of brilliance. It emerged slowly, painfully, from hours of trial, failure, and stubborn hope. Howe labored tirelessly to solve a puzzle that had baffled inventors for decades. How to replicate the rhythm of hand stitching with mechanical grace. And then, one day, it happened. With a soft click, a loop of thread caught perfectly, binding fabric together with a stitch faster and stronger than human hands could achieve. The needle danced up and down with gentle certainty, each movement pulling thread through cloth, weaving a path forward. It was a quiet miracle, the kind that shifts the world not with fanfare, but with the simple beauty of necessity met. Howe's sewing machine was not just a new invention. It was a doorway to a different life. A life where hours spent sewing by hand could be freed, where garments could be made not just with effort, but with ease. In that small room, with only the hum of the mechanism and the soft rustle of fabric. For company, a revolution was stitched into being, one patient thread at a time. Threads of a new array. The steady rhythm of the sewing machine soon echoed far beyond Howe's workshop. It spread into factories where floors stretched wide under high ceilings, and sunlight poured through dusty windows. Machines lined up row after row, each guided by workers who fed fabric under the needles with practiced hands. The air filled with a chorus of clicking, whirring, and the gentle sighs of material transformed. Clothing, once a luxury crafted slowly by skilled tailors or weary mothers, now became a possibility for all. Garments could be made in hours instead of days. Shirts, dresses, trousers all flowed from factories in numbers once unimaginable. And with this change, the very nature of life shifted. Fashion was no longer reserved for the wealthy. Ordinary people could own multiple outfits, dressing not just for warmth and need, but for expression and pride. Colors brightened, styles diversified. Clothing reflected not only the body but the spirit within. Factory towns grew around the hum of sewing machines. Jobs opened, economies stirred. Yet with progress came new challenges: long hours, crowded conditions, and battles over fair wages. Still, for many, the sewing machine meant opportunity where none had existed before. It marked the beginning of a new era, one stitched with possibility, lined with hope, and hemmed by the shared dream of a better, fuller life. The cloth of community. Even as factories roared with production, the sewing machine found a quieter, more personal place in the heart of homes across the world. A single machine, often placed by a window where light pooled kindly, became a cherished possession. Families saved for months to afford one, understanding that in its humming gears lay the chance for independence, for creativity, for survival. Mothers mended and made clothing for growing children. Daughters learned the art of stitching quilts that would warm generations. Entrepreneurs, often women who had been bound by domestic limitations, began small businesses from kitchen tables and front parlors. Needles flew over fabric late into the night. The sound of the sewing machine became a song of hope, a lullaby sung not for sleep, but for dreams of a better tomorrow. Markets and fairs blossomed with goods made by these quiet artisans, dresses sewn with careful hands, embroidered linens, sturdy work clothes, delicate lace. What once was the work of isolated hands now became the weave of communities, stitched together with ambition, creativity, and pride. In rural villages and bustling cities alike, the sewing machine whispered a simple truth, that a thread, guided with care, could bind not just cloth, but people. It could stitch together families, lift up neighborhoods, and spin opportunity from the simplest strands. The home buzzed with new energy, alive with the thrum of progress and the bright colors of possibility, unfurling one seam at a time, a tapestry of progress. The sewing machine stitched itself into daily life. It also wove its threads through the larger fabric of human history, clothing transformed from a mere necessity into a powerful form of expression. The tight-laced corsets of the past gave way to looser dresses that allowed for movement, for freedom. Fashion houses blossomed, creating designs that danced between utility and art. Parisian couture rose on the back of skilled hands and whirring machines. Street fashion bloomed in alleyways and marketplaces, a colorful chorus answering the once exclusive call of high society. The sewing machine enabled designers to dream bigger, to imagine silhouettes and stitches that had once been impossible. It brought to life the draping silks of evening gowns, the rugged denim of working jeans, the intricate beading of ceremonial dress. In times of hardship, the sewing machine stitched uniforms for soldiers, banners for movements, hope into the tattered edges of history. In times of peace, it adorned celebrations with delicate lace and vibrant patterns, wrapping moments of joy in layers of handmade beauty across continents and cultures, from the needlework of rural India to the bustling garment districts of New York. The sewing machine tied humanity together. Its steady dance on fabric reflected the greater dance of progress itself, one stitch at a time, one garment, one dream. Weaving not just clothing, but identity, community, and the ever-expanding vision of what humanity could create when given the right tools. Today, though many sewing machines sit silent in modern homes, and though mass production has shifted their role, the spirit endures. Every crafted garment, every stitched heirloom, every handmade gift carries within it the same legacy, the legacy of hands guided by hope, by perseverance, by the simple belief that something beautiful can be made from almost nothing at all. The sewing machine did not merely change fashion. It changed the story of labor, of creativity, of human potential stitched carefully across the bright, boundless fabric of time. Chapter 11. The washing machine and the flow of freedom, lifting the weight of toil in the earliest mornings of history. Before cities rose and engines roared, there was the steady labor of hands at riversides. Women knelt on worn rocks, bending over cold water, beating heavy cloth against stone. The work was endless. Water splashed, soap stung the skin, and the fabric resisted every effort. Washing was not just a chore, it was a life's burden, carried quietly through generations. But even as the river flowed without end, so too did human dreams. Dreams of something easier, something kinder. In small workshops filled with sawdust and ambition, inventors began to tinker. They crafted wooden washboards, simple frames with ridged surfaces to scrub against. They built hand-cranked drums where clothes could be turned and turned, pushed clean by the force of their own movement. Each invention, no matter how humble, was a ripple, a gentle sign that the tide could change. It was not perfection yet. Washboards still demanded aching arms. Cranked drums still required sweat and strength. But in every scratch of wood against fabric, every churn of hand-turned gears, a quiet hope grew stronger, the idea that hard labor need not be destiny. That toil could be eased. That freedom could be spun, washed, and wrung from the relentless demands of daily life. And so, through the rough hum of early machines and the slap of wet cloth against stone, the world began to shift one small, determined ripple at a time. A tide of transformation, the true wave of change came with the power of electricity. As homes welcomed wires and currents, inventors turned once more to the age-old struggle against dirt and drudgery. They married the simple drum to electric motors, letting machines do what weary hands had long carried alone. The first electric washing machines were modest things, wooden tubs mounted atop motors that shivered and whirred. Yet their arrival was as powerful as a storm sweeping clean the dusty plains of tradition. Suddenly, what had taken half a day or more, the soaking, scrubbing, wringing, could be done by flipping a switch and letting the machine hum steadily. Through the morning, laundry no longer ruled the household. It no longer soaked into every spare hour, leaving women's bodies bent and tired. Instead, the hardship was spun away, leaving behind something rare and precious, time across towns and countrysides. The rhythm of daily life shifted. The thud of wet cloth against rock was replaced by the softer, steadier sound of machines humming behind closed doors. Mothers who had once been bound to backbreaking work found themselves able to rest, to read, to play with children, to dream new dreams. Fathers, too, embraced this transformation as homes grew cleaner, lives grew lighter, and families discovered they could spend hours together, not apart in endless labor. The electric washing machine did not just clean clothes. It cleansed the spirit of a weary world, washing away hardship and wringing out hope in its place. The gift of time, with the burden of washing lifted, families found themselves stepping into a new kind of life. Time, once a rare and precious thing, now flowed more freely. Mothers and daughters gathered around kitchen tables, not wash basins, to share stories and plans. Children played in backyards and gardens, their laughter filling spaces once ruled by the heavy silence of endless work. Communities grew closer. Without the constant pull of duty, neighbors visited one another more often. Friendships deepened. Celebrations lengthened. People discovered hobbies, crafts, and pursuits that had long been buried under the weight of necessity. In countless homes, the washing machine became more than a tool. It was a quiet guardian of time reclaimed. Tea meant an extra hour to linger over breakfast, savoring sunlight through the windows. It meant evenings spent by the radio or reading books, instead of scrubbing and rinsing by lantern light. It meant that dreams once postponed to someday could begin to take root in the now. Women, in particular, found new pathways opening before them. Some used their freed hours to seek education, to build businesses, to advocate for rights long denied. Others simply savored the chance to rest without guilt, a small but vital revolution in itself, the gift of time. Spun gently from the drums of washing machines, unfolded quietly but profoundly, reshaping homes, reshaping lives, and reshaping what humanity believed was possible when freed from relentless toil. A cycle of serendipitous decades passed. The washing machine evolved from a noisy, shaking contraption into a sleek, whispering companion. New designs brought quiet motors and gleaming enamel finishes. Automatic cycles replaced careful supervision. What once required constant attention now moved smoothly from soak to rinse to spin with little more than the press of a button dot in millions of homes. The soft hum of a washing machine became part of the soundtrack of comfort, a steady background. Note to the rhythms of ordinary days. Children colored at the kitchen table while the machine sang softly from the laundry room. Grandparents nodded gently in rocking chairs, the sound of spinning drums blending into their dreams. Late at night, the whir of a wash load became a lullaby for parents catching up on tomorrow's tasks. The washing machine, tucked into basements, closets, and corners, no longer demanded notice. It simply did its work quietly, faithfully, an unseen partner in the endless unfolding of daily life. And so, generation by generation, the cycle of serenity continued. Clean clothes folded into warm stacks. Sheets, crisp and fragrant, smoothed over beds. Towels, soft and welcoming, wrapped around weary bodies. The machine's hum whispered a promise that even in a world often filled with noise and hurry, there could be moments of peace. That hard work could give way to ease. That the burdens of yesterday could be washed clean, making room for gentler days ahead. In every home where the washing machine spins quietly through another cycle, that promise endures, woven into the fabric of modern life, stitched tenderly into the dreams of all who hoped, once long ago, for a better, lighter tomorrow. Chapter 12. The vacuum cleaner and the breath of clean, clearing paths to peace. It began with a simple, troubling sight, a swirl of dust rising into the afternoon light. In a crowded London railway station, Hubert Cecil Booth watched as a demonstration of a new cleaning device unfolded. The machine blew dust into the air with great force, scattering it away from the floor, but not truly removing it. People coughed and waved their hands, the dust cloud settling back onto clothes. And into lungs. Booth frowned. His mind, sharp and curious, turned the scene over like a puzzle piece refusing to fit. Why scatter dust when it could be captured instead? Why not build a machine that did not blow, but breathed? That evening, Booth conducted a quiet experiment. He placed a handkerchief over his mouth, knelt beside a dusty chair, and sucked in deeply. When he pulled the cloth away, it was smeared with dirt. Proof enough that suction, not blowing, was the key to true cleaning. The idea was as bold as it was simple. Create a mechanical lung, a machine that would inhale the debris of life, clearing the air and the surfaces of daily living. Booth's mind raced with possibilities. He envisioned grand devices, not just for palaces or hospitals, but for the modest homes where mothers swept tirelessly, where dust gathered unseen in corners, where children coughed in their beds. In that moment of dusty breath and quiet realization, a gust of genius swept through history, whispering the promise of cleaner days to come. Homes made bright, turning vision into reality, however, demanded more than inspiration. It demanded courage, persistence, and an ability to see beyond the laughter of skeptics. Booth's first vacuum cleaner was a marvel of engineering and a monster of size. His device, dubbed the Puffing Billy, was so large it had to be transported by horse-drawn carriage. The machine itself remained outside the buildings it cleaned, with long hoses snaking through windows and doors, inhaling dust with the deep, mechanical sigh of a creature newly awakened. Despite its size and complexity, the effect was undeniable. Homes, once dimmed by invisible layers of dust, gleamed with new brightness. Hotels, theaters, and royal palaces welcomed Booth's invention, marveling at the purity it brought to their spaces. The machine rumbled and groaned, its hoses hissing softly as they drew in the particles of life that had always been tolerated, but never truly conquered. Carpets blushed back to color. Drapes fluttered free of hidden weight. Air, once heavy with unseen motes, became lighter, sweeter, easier to breathe. The change was more than cosmetic. Clean spaces meant healthier spaces. Fewer coughs, fewer illnesses, whispered through crowded rooms. A home cleared of dust was a home closer to peace, and so, even as Booth's machine thundered outside quiet houses and grand halls alike, a new era dawned. An era where cleanliness was not just a battle fought daily with broom and rag, but a victory won through ingenuity and a breath of mechanical grace, the sweep of easiest with all great inventions. The vacuum cleaner soon grew smaller, smarter, more accessible. What had once required a team of operators and the strength of horses to pull into place now found itself trimmed down, reshaped into portable forms. Electric motors replaced cranks and belts. Metal and wood gave way to lighter materials. Designs grew more elegant, more intuitive. Hotels, once the exclusive domain of Booth's machines, found themselves sharing the blessing of cleanliness with private homes. Middle-class families, scrimping and saving, brought home gleaming devices that promised to sweep away dust, dirt, and the labor that clung to both. And no longer did housekeepers beat carpets with heavy paddles in the icy cold. No longer did mothers kneel for hours with brush and soap to chase the stubborn grime from every corner. Instead, they guided vacuums across their floors like conductors leading an orchestra. The soft hum and sigh of the machine, their music of renewal. Life grew visibly cleaner. Children played on floors that no longer hid unseen dangers. Kitchens shone with more than just polish. They breathed with a freshness once reserved for open fields. Living rooms, bedrooms, hallways all became sanctuaries against the creeping dust of the outside world. The vacuum cleaner, humming faithfully in the background, did more than clean. It lifted burdens, cleared pathways, and granted a simple, powerful gift, the gift of ease, wrapped in the steady promise that every breath taken indoors could be cleaner, sweeter, and freer than before, a dustless horizon as the decades unfolded. The vacuum cleaner became an unassuming but beloved part of daily life. Tiny motors, hidden inside sleek frames, whirred to life with the press of a button. No longer monstrous or loud, they became companions of comfort, working quietly, almost invisibly, to maintain the serenity that modern life craved. In homes large and small, the ritual unfolded the same way. A quiet corner disturbed by sunlight revealed a scatter of dust. A gentle push of the machine, a soft hum rising like a sigh, and the dust disappeared, erased as if it had never been. The act of cleaning, once exhausting and endless, became simple. A moment of mindfulness, a cycle of care. Parents tiddied up before family dinners. Children learned to guide the vacuum along hallways, helping stitch together the fabric of home life. Grandparents smiled as sleek machines roamed carpets they had once scrubbed by hand. Vacuum cleaners became smarter, two learning paths, sensing dirt, moving autonomously. Yet even as the technology advanced, the heart of the promise remained. To clear away yesterday's worries, to smooth the way for fresh beginnings. In quiet neighborhoods, in bustling cities, in apartments perched high above the streets, and in cottages nestled against green hills, the soft, steady hum of vacuum cleaners wove itself into the soundtrack of ordinary peace. They did not shout their importance. They simply worked, clearing not just floors but minds, giving the world a little more room to breathe, to dream, to rest. And so, with every sweep, every cycle, every quiet breath drawn into their hidden lungs, vacuum cleaners carried forward Booth's original dream, the vision of a dustless horizon, stretching wide and clear beneath the bright, boundless sky of a better tomorrow. Chapter 13. The radio and the voice of the air singing across the silence. The night was quiet, as most nights were, thick with a stillness that stretched from one horizon to another. In a small, crowded workshop, a man stood by a strange apparatus of wires, coils, and hope. Guglielmo Marconi leaned closer to his creation, heart steady, fingers poised, The antenna stood tall outside, reaching toward the stars, silent and expectant. Marconi sent a simple signal, a pulse of energy invisible to any human eye, and waited across the open air. Through the invisible fabric that wrapped the earth, the signal traveled. A crackle, a whisper, a sound where there had been only silence. The first wireless communication had been born. And no more did voices and messages have to cling to wires stretched across land and sea. No longer did distance dictate the speed or strength of human connection. With this faint flickering pulse through the ether, a new era had quietly arrived, an era where thoughts could fly, weightless and free. At first, the world barely noticed. Skeptics scoffed. Support was scarce. Yet Marconi persisted, building towers, testing ranges, refining the reach. Slowly, the distance grew from room to room, from town to town, from continent to continent. In the beginning, the signals carried only dots and dashes, simple Morse code stuttering across the dark. But even that was a marvel, of voice reaching where none had gone before, a bridge built not of stone or steel, but of sheer will, a signal in the silence, a breath in the great stillness, and with it, the first threads of a web that would one day weave the whole world together. Songs around the dial as the years turned. Those faint Morse dots and dashes blossomed into something richer, warmer, more human. The crackling static gave way to music, thin at first, then stronger. The first songs leapt into the air, carried by unseen hands to homes scattered across cities and countrysides. Radios appeared like small shrines in living rooms, glowing with the soft light of hope and wonder. Families gathered close, pulling chairs nearer, leaning forward as if proximity could sweeten the fragile signal. The air filled with orchestras and ballads, with storytellers spinning tales that wrapped themselves around hearts like warm blankets. News reports clicked into life, carrying the world's heartbeat directly into kitchens and parlors. It was a magic unlike any the world had known. No ticket was needed, no long journey to far-off places. With a simple turn of the dial, an entire universe unfolded. A concert in New York, a story told in London, a news bulletin from Paris. Children sat cross-legged on worn rugs, eyes wide. Grandparents nodded in time with the music, faces softened by memory. Parents smiled at one another over steaming cups of tea, connected not just to their family, but to millions of unseen souls sharing the same song, the same story, the same small, wondrous moment. The radio did not just broadcast sound. It broadcast belonging. It sang across the silence, stitching together distant lives with melodies and words, weaving a community that no walls, no seas, no mountains could contain. And for the first time, the human voice, in all its fragile beauty, truly belonged to the air. The rhythm of Unitius radios spread. So too did a new rhythm, a rhythm that pulls not just through machines, but through the hearts of entire nations. Anthems rose like sunrises, binding strangers into citizens, stirring quiet pride in living rooms across continents. Love songs floated through static, carrying promises across oceans and borders. News bulletins crackled in living rooms, binding listeners into a single, breathless moment of knowing. During times of joy, radios roared with celebration. Victories, elections, milestones all flowed into homes on waves of sound, reminding people that they were part of something larger, something shared. And during times of fear and sorrow, radios became lifelines. In war, they carried the steady voice of leaders offering comfort and resolve. In disaster, they spread news of aid and survival. In isolation, they whispered solidarity into every waiting ear. The radio dissolved distance not by erasing it, but by filling it with meaning. A song sung in a smoky New Orleans studio could bring tears to a widow's eyes in a remote Scottish village. A news flash from a bustling capital could send ripples of hope or sorrow through quiet country roads. The world found a new way to beat together, to breathe together. Voices no longer ended at the walls of a room or the borders of a town. They traveled the currents of the air itself, threading human lives into a single, sprawling tapestry of sound. The radio offered not just information, not just entertainment, but a profound, steady reminder. We are connected, always, even across the vastest silence. Waves of foreverest decades passed. The technology of radio changed, grew sleeker, smaller, more powerful, but its heart remained the same. Radio waves continued to hum invisibly around us, endless and tireless. Every note, every story, every heartbeat launched into the air still traveled, still lingered somewhere out among the stars. Threads of human spirit stretched across time and space. New generations found their own songs, their own voices to carry forward. Talk shows, sports broadcasts, late-night call-in hours filled the airwaves with new stories, new rhythms. Yet beneath the changing melodies, the soul of radio endured. A tea remained a river without banks, a song without end, flowing through every city and farm, every mountain and shore. It carried the quiet laughter of children, the urgent words of wartime broadcasts, the trembling voices of lovers dedicating songs across unseen miles, even as television flickered to life, and later, the endless scroll of the internet rose. Radio kept singing, quietly, faithfully, ever ready to reach out and pull a lonely heart back into the warmth of belonging. In hospital rooms, in long-haul trucks, in solitary homes nestled deep in woods, the radio's soft hum still offered companionship. A voice in the darkness, a melody against the silence. Today, the world hums with more connections than ever before. Yet the radio remains one of our oldest, purest gifts, the ability to reach out across the unseen spaces and whisper, "You are not alone." Waves of sound, waves of spirit, waves of forever rising, falling, carrying the timeless music of humanity onward into the endless sky. Chapter 14, The Television and the Glowing Story, a window to other worlds in the quiet corners of early laboratories, where wires tangled like ivy and gears clattered in fits and starts. A dream was flickering into being. Inventors, restless and determined, chased a new kind of magic, the dream of capturing motion itself, not in paper sketches or stuttering still frames, but in living, breathing images that could dance across a screen. The work was messy, full of failed experiments and broken filaments. Mechanical discs spun furiously, attempting to stitch movement from the blur of light and shadow. Tiny cathode ray tubes, humming with strange energy, glowed softly in darkened rooms. Men like John Logie Baird and Philo Farnsworth devoted years to teasing the picture out of the static. They sent silhouettes, ghostly and uncertain, across short distances. Faces blurred into shapes. Movements stuttered like a dream half remembered, but behind every crackle and ghostly flicker, there was promised the belief that one day, pictures would not only move, but would leap from city to city, country to country, carrying stories to anyone who cared to watch. And then, slowly, it happened. A single image, a face, a hand, a spinning toy captured in light, sent through the air, and received on a glass screen that glowed like a captured star. The television was not born perfect. It was born stubborn, grainy, alive. A tiny spark. Against the heavy dark, ready to grow, to roar, to change the world. In that first flicker, the dream of motion, of magic, had taken root. A window had opened not just onto scenes and stories, but onto endless worlds waiting to be explored. Tales in every home as television sets found their way into living rooms. The world itself began to shift. And no longer did entertainment belong only to concert halls or crowded theaters. No longer were news reports limited to the printed page or the crackling voice of the radio. Now, stories danced across living room walls, filling homes with laughter, suspense, wonder, and shared breath. Families gathered close, pulling chairs into tight half circles around the glowing screen. Curtains were drawn to deepen the magic. Small children sat cross-legged on the floor, staring upward with wide, unblinking eyes. Each evening became a ritual. As the sky darkened and dinner plates were cleared, televisions came to life with shimmering images, black and white dramas weaving tension and hope, cartoon characters bounding joyfully into imagination, news anchors delivering the day's triumphs, and sorrows with solemn faces and clear voices. The television was not merely a machine. It was a storyteller, tireless and generous. It offered windows to distant lands, visions of history unfolding, and glimpses of futures not yet lived through. Those early screens, living rooms transformed. They became theaters for adventure, classrooms for discovery, stages for music, courts for justice, and playgrounds for laughter. The flickering images stitched themselves into the fabric of daily life. Grandparents dozed in armchairs as game. Shows flashed across the screen. Teenagers leaned forward, enthralled by glimpses of a wider, more complicated world. Young lovers shared nervous glances during televised dances and dramas. The glow of television was not just light. It was connection, humming softly through every room it touched. The mirror of Driam's television, with all its glow and clatter, became more than a mere reflection of events. It became a mirror of the dreams, fears, and hopes that lived within. Every viewer's heart in comedies. People found permission to laugh at life's absurdities, to see their own small troubles turn gentle and bright. In dramas, they watched heroes struggle, fall, rise again, each triumph echoing the quiet battles of ordinary lives. News broadcasts carried the weight of the world, reminding viewers that beyond their own streets, history surged forward with victories and losses, bravery and heartbreak. Natural wonders, human achievements, and terrible tragedies unfolded with equal clarity, uniting millions in shared witness. Television reflected imagination, too. Science fiction shows hurled audiences into distant galaxies, daring them to dream beyond Earth's bounds. Historical dramas swept viewers backward into times long past, stitching memory and invention into rich tapestries of wonder. And when fears swelled, wars fought, rights denied, futures uncertain, television did not look away. It captured protest marches. It showed families torn and rebuilt. It whispered urgent questions into the public ear. Yet it also offered dreams, dreams of unity, of peace, of the small daily kindnesses that knit together the grand, messy story of humanity. Television did not tell its viewers what to think. Instead, it held up a mirror, fragile, flickering, beautiful, and let them see themselves and each other, clearer and closer than ever before, a window to tomorrow's years past. The tiny spark in the screen grew into something vast and vibrant. Black and white gave way to color, a river of hues spilling from the glass, drenching living rooms in greens and blues, in bright yellows and rich reds. Screens grew wider, images sharper, stories bolder, technology leapt forward. Satellite feeds stretched broadcasts across oceans and mountains. Cable networks multiplied choices beyond imagining. And eventually, digital worlds bloomed, where stories no longer needed to wait for scheduled hours, but could be summoned at a whim, endless and immediate. Yet through every change, every leap in clarity and convenience, the heart of television remained. It remained a window to other lives, other lands, other dreams. A glowing rectangle of possibility, offering viewers the chance to wonder, to learn, to connect. In quiet homes tucked among city towers, in cabins perched on remote hillsides, in dorm rooms and hospital rooms and bustling living rooms alike. The glow endures. Today, Screens have shifted again from televisions to tablets, from big shared spaces to small private moments. Yet each flickering image, each whispered story, still draws its line back to that first crackling picture sent through tangled wires and hope that television remains a faithful dreamer. A machine that does not simply show the world as it is, but dares always to show the world as it could be, a window that looks out and invites all who watch to step through into memory, into magic, into the unbroken tomorrow that still waits beyond the screen. Chapter 15, The Refrigerator and the Keeper of Cool, Preserving Life's Abundance in the Earliest Kitchens of Human History. Preservation was a daily battle against time. Food was fleeting, its freshness measured not in days, but often in mere hours. Without the power of cold, life moved in rhythm with spoilage, with swift decay, with the race to consume before loss, long before electricity ever found its way into homes. The idea of preservation flickered in simple forms: cooling. Cellars dug deep into the earth, blocks of ice harvested from frozen lakes and stored in thick-walled houses. Salt and smoke became ancient allies, drawing moisture from meat, extending survival in small, hard-won increments, but nature's chill was unpredictable, fragile. Ice melted, freshness faded, and still the human heart yearned for something more permanent, a way to capture cold itself. Inventors in dusty workshops took up the challenge. They experimented with strange, clanking machines that hissed and sputtered, using gases like ammonia and ether to pull warmth away from small, enclosed spaces. Early cooling devices were dangerous, complex, and costly, but within them stirred the first promise of real control over the forces of nature. Slowly, cautiously, the idea took hold. That cold could be made not borrowed from winter's hand, not stolen from frozen ponds, but created, contained, and harnessed for daily life. It was not just a technical challenge. It was a quest for security, for comfort, for a future where food could be more than a fleeting gift. It was a quiet revolution, building one cautious invention at a time, a chill in the air that would change the course of human living. Kitchens made abundant when the first true refrigerators entered homes. They did not arrive with blinding speed or sweeping fanfare. They arrived in slow, deliberate steps, each one expanding the boundaries of what a kitchen could hold, what a family could dream. And no longer were fresh vegetables a fragile luxury, slipping away before the week's end. No longer did milk spoil overnight or meat need to be consumed in hurried feasts to avoid loss. The refrigerator offered a new kind of abundance, one woven with time. In kitchens once governed by urgency, there now came a soft, steady confidence. Tomatoes ripened slowly behind glass doors. Cream stayed sweet. Leftovers, once perilous after a single night, could nourish families across days. Meals grew richer, more varied. Salads brightened tables even in the depths of winter. Dishes from distant cultures, relying on ingredients that once seemed impossible to keep, now found their way into daily meals. A quiet culinary revolution unfolded, not on grand stages, but over small family dinners, in the hum of quiet kitchens where mothers, fathers, and children planned meals not just for today, but for tomorrow and the day after. The refrigerator stitched new patterns into life's fabric. It granted the simple grace of choice, the ability to store, to savor, to stretch the harvest's bounty far beyond its fragile beginning, and in doing so, it did more than preserve food. It preserved moments, gatherings around tables, shared laughter over steaming dishes, late-night snacks pulled from shelves aglow with soft, clean light. It preserved life itself in all its everyday beauty, the cold of progress and time. What began as an invention for the wealthy, the rare, and expensive, mechanical marvel reserved for grand homes and high society, became a necessity for all industrial innovation raced to meet growing demand. Factories refined processes. Designers crafted sleeker, safer, more affordable models. Retailers offered payment plans that placed the dream of refrigeration within reach of ordinary families, and with each refrigerator sold, a quiet tide rolled. Forward across the world, grocery stores transformed, offering fresh produce year-round. Farmers expanded their reach, sending milk, eggs, and meats farther than a day's ride. Health improved as spoilage and foodborne illnesses, once grim facts of life, were steadily beaten back. The cold reshaped economies and rewrote social maps. It empowered people to live farther from markets, to rely less on daily deliveries, to plan more and worry less. It loosened the grip of scarcity and opened doors to a fuller, more varied, more secure way of living. In urban apartments stacked high into the sky, and in remote farmhouses nestled against wide fields, refrigerators took their place. Quietly, faithfully, they guarded the nourishment of daily life. What had once been a symbol of luxury became an anchor of stability, a guardian against hunger, a partner in progress behind every polished door. Humming softly through sleepless nights and bustling mornings, the refrigerator promised not only the preservation of food, but the preservation of dignity, of dreams, of the simple right to a life lived with a little less fear. A frosty Legacitidae. The refrigerator stands so common, so quietly ever present, that it is easy to forget the revolution it carries inside. A tea hums gently from kitchen corners, from dormitory rooms, from hospital hallways and country inns. It keeps the soft green of lettuces crisp, the pale pink of milk pure, the bright reds and golds of fruits ready for morning hands. It carries forward a lineage of resilience, born from icehouses and smokehouses, from the first desperate strivings to make food last against the tireless pull of decay. Behind its modern panels and efficient motors, the refrigerator cradles a legacy of abundance once unimaginable. It preserves not just what we eat, but the rhythms of our lives. The packed lunches slipped into school bags, the midnight ice cream stolen in sleepy kitchens, the careful saving of Thanksgiving leftovers, the quiet miracle of a cool drink on a sweltering summer afternoon. It preserves moments that might otherwise have been lost, picnics unspoiled, family feasts stretched across long afternoons, holiday gatherings where favorite dishes wait patiently behind the frost-speckled glass. The refrigerator, steadfast and simple, hums through the background of all these memories, its quiet labor, asking for no thanks but giving so much. And so, in homes across the world, in the deep of night and the bright bustle of day, the keeper of cool carries on preserving not just food, but hope, security, and the everyday joys that make a life full, rich, and enduring. Chapter 16. The microwave oven and the warmth of now cooking at the speed of life in a busy laboratory filled with hums, clatters, and the scent of heated metal. Percy Spencer stood before a radar magnetron. It was just another day of routine. Experiments, or so it seemed. Yet, tucked in Spencer's pocket, a simple candy bar was about to change the world. As the machine pulsed with invisible energy, Spencer noticed something curious. The chocolate had melted into a sticky, unexpected mess. Intrigued, he placed a few kernels of corn near the device. Moments later, they popped into fluffy explosions of white. He had stumbled upon something hidden in plain sight. Not heat from fire, not heat from metal, but warmth summoned by waves, microwaves rippling invisibly through the air. Exciting. Water molecules until food cooked from the inside out. What had begun as an accident quickly became a mission. Spencer and his team set about taming this invisible power, enclosing it in safe boxes of metal and glass, learning to focus it, control it, and make it dance only where needed. The first microwave ovens were heavy, hulking machines, standing taller than men and weighing as much as a small car. Yet within them lived a simple, brilliant idea. Cooking could be faster. Food could be warmed, nourished, made ready for life's hungry hands in mere moments, not hours. It was not a rejection of tradition, but an adaptation to a world moving faster, dreaming bigger, needing time more than ever. A wave of warmth had been captured, a small, steady glow to meet a world eager for speed, for comfort, for a new way to gather around the table, meals in a moment. At first, the microwave was a curiosity appearing in restaurants, factories, and the rare extravagant home. It was too large, too costly, too unknown for everyday life, but as engineers refined designs, shrinking the machines down to countertop companions and bringing prices within reach, the microwave found its rightful place, not as a replacement for stoves and ovens, but as a new kind of hearth, one attuned to the tempo of modern life. Families discovered new rhythms around this quiet device. Busy mornings saw oatmeal and coffee heated in seconds. Lunch breaks welcomed soups steaming gently in bowls. Evenings filled with the buttery scent of popcorn bursting open in paper bags, ready for movie nights and after-school laughter. The frozen dinner, once unimaginable, became a staple. Meals wrapped in foil trays, offering a taste of convenience that matched the new pace of daily living. No longer did nourishing a family require hours of simmering and stirring. Warmth could arrive at the push of a button, reliable and swift, from office breakrooms to college dormitories, from crowded apartments to sprawling suburban kitchens. The microwave's soft hum became part of the day's soundtrack. It was the sound of busy hands finding a moment to rest, the sound of small, joyful interruptions, a meal heated between meetings, a cup of tea warmed against a cold evening. The microwave didn't erase tradition. It carved out new spaces within it, where life's hurried moments could still find comfort, where even the smallest meal could be touched by warmth, and where the ancient need to nourish could be answered in the blink of a modern age. The heat of Shangeth arrival of the microwave into everyday kitchens brought with it more than just faster meals. It brought a subtle shift in how families lived, cooked, and dreamed about food itself. Recipes adapted. New ones were born. Microwavable mugs cradled cakes that rose in minutes. Steaming vegetables danced in vented bags. Leftovers, once a burden, became opportunities for quick, easy meals warmed with minimal effort, enjoyed with casual delight. Kitchen design evolved too. Once dominated by large, imposing ranges and heavy cookware, kitchens grew sleeker, more flexible, shaped to accommodate the small humming box that promised ease. Cabinets adjusted, countertops cleared space, habits rearranged themselves like ingredients in a new unfolding recipe. Yet, for all the change, the heart of the kitchen remained. The table, sturdy and waiting, still called families to gather, still beckoned them to sit, to share, to listen and speak. Whether a feast slow-cooked over hours or a dinner heated in minutes, the sacred act of gathering around a meal endured. Traditions stretched but did not break. Grandmothers taught grandchildren how to heat the perfect cup of cocoa on a rainy day. Parents passed down the secret of the best leftover lasagna, crisped just right by careful microwave reheating. Friends shared laughter over steaming plates. Cobbled together from late-night cravings, the microwave didn't replace the soul of cooking. It joined it, humming quietly at its side, helping ensure that even in lives spinning faster and faster, there would still be time for nourishment, for conversation, for the small, golden rituals that make a house feel like home, a glow of easy today. In kitchens across the globe, the microwave sits quietly, an unassuming guardian of warmth and ease. Its soft hum blends into the background of daily life, unnoticed until the moment it is needed. A mug grows hot between shivering fingers. A plate of leftovers releases the fragrance of yesterday's memories. A frozen meal promises comfort after a long, weary day. Behind every beep and every quick, steady cycle lies a story of adaptation, of humanity's endless quest not just to survive, but to thrive in the lives they build, the moments they carve from busy hours. Children learn independence with the microwave's gentle help heating their first bowls of soup, learning to prepare their own small snacks. Elderly hands, finding heavy pots harder to lift, still craft nourishing meals with the easy press of buttons. Students, workers, dreamers all lean on the microwave's patient. Waiting warmth.it offers more than just speed. It offers the kindness of possibility, the chance to eat well without great labor, the chance to gather without great cost, the chance to savor the precious spaces between the demands of the day. In this soft, glowing box, Percy Spencer's melted candy bar has become a legacy of lightness. A reminder that invention, at its best, bends not just to efficiency, but to humanity's deeper needs for care, for time, for a little more breathing room in the rush of life. And so, every time the microwave hums to life soft, steady, reliable, it carries forward a quiet revolution, the warmth of now, connecting generations, feeding dreams, and wrapping the pace of the modern world in the gentle embrace of something timeless. Chapter 17. The Photocopier and the Echo of Pages Spreading Knowledge Like Light. In a small, dimly lit lab, Chester Carlson bent over a metal plate coated with sulfur dust. The air around him buzzed faintly with static. His fingers, stained with powder and hope, moved carefully, guiding light and shadow over the surface. Carlson, the son of a modest printer and a lifelong tinkerer, knew intimately the burdens of information, locked away, laboriously copied by hand, typed letter by letter, inaccessible to many. He dreamed of a world where duplication could be as natural, as effortless, as light itself. One day, after countless failures, the breakthrough came. He scribbled the words 102238 Astoria on a glass plate, pressed it onto the sulfur-coated surface, exposed it to a flash of light, and dusted it with fine powder. When he lifted the plate, there, faint but real, was a perfect copy of his writing. The process was called xerography, writing with dry powder and electric charge. In that small, dusty room, a revolution quietly sparked. Carlson had found a way to free information from scarcity. No longer would copies require retyping, redrawing, rewriting. No longer would knowledge be bound by the speed of human hands. IT was a flash of genius, born from patient struggle, that promised to carry ideas across the world faster and farther than ever before. And in that first grainy image, the seeds of an infinite library began to stir, waiting to blossom into a future where information could be shared as easily as sunlight fills a room. Pages multiplied at first. Few saw the power in Carlson's creation. Companies turned him away, skeptical that such a machine could find a place in a world already used to mimeographs, carbon paper, and clattering typewriters. But Carlson persisted. Patient as always, he partnered with a small company called Haloid, which in time would become Xerox. Together, they nurtured xerography from a delicate laboratory trick into a robust, dependable machine, a photocopier that could sit in an office, ready to serve at the touch of a button. When the first commercial Xerox machine, the Model 914, entered workplaces in the late 1950s, its impact was immediate and profound. And no longer did secretaries retype entire documents to share with others. No longer did teachers painstakingly transcribe notes onto blackboards or prepare handfuls of carbon copies by hand. Instead, a single sheet placed on a glass surface could birth dozens, hundreds of identical pages quickly, effortlessly, cleanly. The office began to hum with a new kind of energy. Copy rooms became busy hubs, their whirring machines producing memos, contracts, reports, newsletters, everything the modern world demanded, and demanded in abundance. schools blossomed too. Teachers could now hand each student a printed lesson, a reading excerpt, a fresh worksheet. Learning, once confined by limited materials, spilled into eager hands. The photocopier multiplied not just pages, but possibilities, allowing ideas to stretch further, reach deeper, touch more minds in more moments. What once took hours could now be done in seconds. And in those seconds, the future moved a little closer. The shadow of knowledge's photocopiers spread from offices into libraries, schools, community centers, and homes. They carried more than just the tools of business and education. They became vessels for life itself. Love letters were carefully copied, preserving words that felt too precious to risk losing. Legal documents were duplicated, granting people security and peace of mind. Family recipes, scrawled in aging ink, were preserved for generations yet to come. Flyers and posters bloomed on telephone poles and bulletin boards, calls to action, invitations to gatherings, voices lifted in protest or celebration. Activists found in the photocopier a silent ally, a way to broadcast dreams and demands without the gatekeepers of traditional media. The humble page, replicated again and again, became a universal carrier of human feeling, contracts, and poems. Licenses and letters, essays and sketches, each copy whispered its own small part of the greater human story, of deals made and friendships sealed, of families built and futures planned, of ideas shared across tables, across towns, across oceans, with every mechanical click and warm sheet sliding into the output tray. The photocopier deepened the bonds between people and their words. It democratized the act of communication, making it possible for anyone with a few coins, a few seconds, to spread a message, to preserve a thought, to leave a mark on the unfolding world. In every copied page lived a shadow of knowledge, a gentle echo of a voice determined not to be lost, a copy of Tamaratode. We live in a world shaped invisibly but profoundly by the legacy of xerography. Though digital files now soar across networks at the speed of thought, though printers have grown sleek and homes brim with technology, the photocopier's spirit remains. It lives in the ease with which we expect to share ideas, in the certainty that a document, a memory, a thought can be preserved not just once, but infinitely, for any who wish to see it. Modern machines, quieter and faster than their ancestors, continue the work. In offices where contracts still require signatures on real, tangible pages. In schools where teachers still pass handouts from desk to desk. In libraries where scholars leaf through carefully reproduced manuscripts, tracing the fingerprints of history itself. The photocopier's true gift was never just speed. It was accessibility, the notion that knowledge, once captured, could ripple outward in endless circles, touching more lives with each cycle of the drum and flash of the light. It made information feel abundant, generous, shared, and so, in every hum of a copy machine, in every warm page stacked neatly into trays and folders, there is a whisper of Chester Carlson's dream, that no thought should remain trapped by scarcity, that no idea once sparked should be forced to flicker out alone. That knowledge should move like light freely, warmly, forever, a copy of tomorrow, made one soft page at a time. Chapter 18. The coffee machine and the morning's song brewing comfort in every cup, in the high hills where the mist clings to green branches and the air smells of damp earth. Small cherries ripen under the watchful eye of the sun. Inside, each cherry hides a seed, humble, plain, waiting. It is these seeds, once roasted and ground, that will travel oceans, cross continents, and find their way into kitchens, cafes, and hearts. Long before the first coffee machine hissed to life, long before steam met metal in the dance of brewing, there was the bean, quiet, patient, filled with promise. Ancient hands once plucked these fruits from wild shrubs. Ancient fires once coaxed the oils and fragrance from their cores. Through centuries, coffee found its place among rituals of waking, thinking, gathering, and dreaming. When roasted carefully, the bean's hard shell cracks open to reveal an inner richness, an alchemy of deep, earthy aromas and bold, bitter sweetness. Water, hot and searching, pulls those hidden flavors into liquid form, weaving a dark, shimmering thread from plant to cup, and thus, from these silent seeds, a story unfolds not just of agriculture, but of culture. A story of energy conjured from earth and sun, of comfort brewed from patience and care, long before it became a morning habit or an afternoon pause. Coffee was already a kind of magic, a humble being whispering to those willing to listen, offering warmth, focus, and a moment of small, profound joy. A tea was a promise, one that would soon be carried even further, fueled by steam and ingenuity. Into the everyday rhythm of modern life, cafes alive with steam as cities grew and streets filled with the clang and hum of new industries, another sound began to rise. The soft hiss of steam, the clink of porcelain cups, the low murmur of conversation. Spun over tables small and wide. In Italy, Angelo Muriando sought to make coffee faster, richer, more accessible to a world that no longer had time to wait over slow dripping brews. His invention, the first espresso machine, was a marvel of practicality and poetry, using steam to press water through fine coffee grounds, extracting boldness in a fraction of the time. With Moriando's early designs and the refinements that followed, cafes blossomed like wildflowers across Europe. Their doors swung open onto crowded streets. Their windows steamed against the chill of early mornings and the damp of late evenings. Inside, life swirled. Artists and poets sketched dreams onto napkins. Workers paused between shifts to nurse tiny cups of strength. Philosophers debated loudly, their gestures as wild as their ideas. Lovers leaned close across battered tables, hands wrapped around warm mugs. The cafe was more than a place to drink. It was a sanctuary, a forge for thoughts and friendships, a breathing space in the rush of city life. And always, the coffee machine stood at the heart of it all, humming, hissing, steady, turning beans into brews, turning moments into memories. Steam curled through the air like incense, carrying with it the scent of distant lands and the promise of 1,000 unwritten stories. Cafes became the heartbeat of neighborhoods, and coffee, once a simple cup, became the shared breath of a growing, dreaming world, the ritual of dawn in the private spaces of home, too. The coffee machine carved out its sacred place, morning after morning. Before the sun had fully stretched itself over rooftops and hills, the kitchen would stir to life. A soft clatter of cups, a sleepy yawn, a familiar hum as the machine warmed itself into redness. The ritual of coffee became, for many, the first quiet conversation of the day, not with another person, but with oneself. Water poured, grounds scooped and smoothed, buttons pressed. The smell of brewing coffee rose like a herald of awakening, winding its way through sleepy rooms, calling minds gently back to the world. A tea was a ritual of small comforts. A hand wrapped around, a warm mug, a sip taken slowly in the half-light of a still sleeping house. A moment stolen before the demands of the day began to tap at the windows and doors. In families, the ritual became a kind of silent inheritance. Parents showing children how to measure the grounds just right, how to wait for the perfect moment when the brew darkened to its richest hue. Partners learning each other's preferences, a little stronger, a little sweeter, a little slower. Even those who lived alone found company in the act, the steadfast patience of the machine, the soft anticipation of the first taste, the quiet affirmation that another day, whatever it might hold, could begin with a little warmth, a little kindness to oneself. Coffee machines became more than appliances. They became companions of the dawn, guardians of beginnings, keepers of countless small, sacred mornings. A sip of eternity, every cup of coffee, no matter how quick or casual, carries within it a journey, a line stretching backward across oceans. And Centuries.it begins with a seed planted under foreign stars. It wins through farmers' calloused hands, through roasters who read the color of beans like poets read the sky. It travels aboard ships and trains, into bustling cities and quiet towns, finally finding its way to a cup held gently between two waking hands. Each sip draws from distant fields, from ancient rituals, from countless mornings past and countless mornings yet to come. And though machines have changed, growing smaller, faster, smarter, the heart of coffee remains the same. It is still the humble alchemy of warmth pulled from seed and water, still the same deep offering of focus, of comfort, of connection. In crowded train stations, solitary kitchens, bustling office break rooms, and sidewalk cafes where strangers brush shoulders and share the thin, invisible bond of the morning, the song of coffee continues. It is a song of beginnings, of resilience, of comfort spun from simple things. It is the song of 1,000 dreams launched over steaming cups, of a million quiet moments stitched into the fabric of everyday life, a sip of eternity, captured in porcelain, in paper cups, in cherished mugs, the small, steady miracle of gathering distant lands and long histories into the warmth of now. And so, each morning, as machines hum and steam hisses softly against the silence, the world takes another sip and the ancient, enduring ritual begins again. Chapter 19. The computer printer and the written dream, bridging thought and paper in the early hum of computer rooms, where spinning reels and blinking lights whispered of possibility. A new sound joined the mechanical symphony, the sputter, click, and soft whir of the first computer printers. They were not graceful at first. Heavy, clunky machines, standing tall with tangled wires and gears. Their movements were jerky, deliberate, cautious, almost shy about the weight of the task they carried. But inside those early devices, something extraordinary was unfolding. For centuries, thought had lived in ink and paper. Writers scratched with quills, students scribbled with pencils, architects dragged pens across brittle drafts. Now, with the rise of computers, thought began to live inside glass and code, light and signal, yet something in the human spirit longed still for touch, for the feel of a page in hand, for the permanence of ideas made solid. The first printers answered that longing. Awkward though they were, dot matrix printers rattled their pins against ribbons, leaving behind letters made of tiny dots, stitched together like the early stars of a new sky. Line printers thundered through heavy paper, shaping lines of text with mechanical precision. Each printed page was a small miracle. Words born in the cold hum of a machine now rested warmly in human hands. Images, rough and pixelated, hinted at a future where dreams could move seamlessly from mind to screen to paper. The ink was smudged, the letters uneven, the process slow. But the bridge had been built, the first arch of connection between the ephemeral world of digital thought and the enduring world of tangible creation. Pages from the futures printers evolved. So too did the visions they made real. Laser printers arrived, sleek and humming, casting pages with light instead of force. Inkjet printers danced fine streams of color across white canvases, blending shades and shapes with astonishing delicacy. Suddenly, the future leapt into homes, offices, classrooms, and studios. Artists found themselves wielding new tools. Images, dreamed in software, now spilled onto paper with stunning fidelity. Photographs, paintings, designs born from pure imagination, taking shape in brilliant hues. Writers, too, found a new rhythm. No longer tied to manual typewriters or typesetting presses, they composed at digital speed, seeing their words unfold in black and white, almost as fast as thought itself. Engineers drafted blueprints in pixel-perfect detail, sending schematics Spinning through printers into the eager hands of builders and dreamers, the printer became an invisible hand, lifting the unseen into sight. It served no single field, no single purpose. It offered itself to any who had ideas to share, designs to offer, stories to tell, from a child's first printed poem to a scientist's revolutionary diagram, from invitations to weddings to posters. Calling for change, the printer carried them all quietly, faithfully, without judgment. Every page was a step forward, a declaration. What we dream can become real, and what is real can be shared, passed hand to hand, generation to generation. The page was no longer just a medium. It was a vessel, carrying the future from imagination into existence. The mark of creation there is a particular magic in holding something you once only imagined. A story once tapped into a blinking cursor now rests in a folded manuscript. A design, once spun inside the confines of a computer screen, now lays flat and vibrant on a desk. A dream, fragile and fleeting, pressed gently into permanence. The printer does more than transcribe. It marks the world with human effort, raw, imperfect, beautiful. Documents are signed, sealed, and saved. Poems are mailed across oceans to loved ones waiting for words only paper can carry. Blueprints find their way to factories, studios, and workbenches, guiding hands that build bridges, hospitals, and homes. The printer makes no distinction between the grand and the humble. A shopping list, a heartfelt letter, a groundbreaking theory, all pass through its quiet mechanisms, finding form and voice. In a world that often rushes toward the ephemeral, toward fleeting images, toward temporary clicks, the printer stands as a quiet guardian of the tangible. It reminds us that thought matters, that ideas deserve weight, texture, and space, that imagination, when pressed into paper, leaves behind more than memory. It leaves a record, a trace, a legacy. With every printed page, creation steps closer to reality, whispering that the act of bringing something into the world, no matter how small, is always sacred. The printer hums softly. A midwife to imagination, a craftsman to dreams, a sheet of legacity. Printers hum away in the background of daily life, often unnoticed, often uncelebrated. Yet, with every page they offer, they extend a quiet invitation to remember that creation is a gift not just for today, but for tomorrow. Archives brim with printed documents, each a snapshot of thought at a moment in time. Contracts that built companies, treaties that shaped nations, letters that changed lives, diagrams that fueled inventions, books that sparked revolutions of the mind. Even in an age of dazzling screens and clouded servers, the printed page holds a special kind of authority. It can be folded into a pocket, pressed into a hand, tucked into the pages of a novel to be found years later. Yellowed but alive. It endures storms, outlives broken hard drives, survives forgotten passwords. It exists not in flashes of light, but in ink and fiber, a physical testament to the human urge to make our mark, to share, to remember. The humble sheet of paper, born from a printer's humming heart, carries stories larger than itself. It is a map, a letter, a blueprint, a promise. A bridge between minds, between eras, between the fleeting spark of an idea and the lasting warmth of something that can be touched, read, understood, and so, every page, however small, however simple, joins the great archive of human striving, a testament not just to what we know, but to what we dream, to what we dare to bring into the world, a sheet of legacy, handed gently from one generation to the next. Chapter 20. The mobile phone in the world within reach, carrying the universe in a hand, in a world still stitched together by heavy wires and distant exchanges. The idea of speaking freely through the air felt more like fantasy than future. But in 1973, standing on a bustling New York sidewalk, Martin Cooper lifted a heavy, boxy device to his ear. It was large and awkward, a weight in his hand, but it carried within it something weightless. Possibility.as, he spoke into the prototype mobile phone. Cooper made a call not from an office, not from a car, but from the open air, a call to a competitor, a friendly nod across the landscape of innovation. His words floated invisibly through space, bending past towers and signals, reaching across the city in a way no one had ever truly done before. The device itself was far from graceful. It took 10 hours to charge for a mere 30 minutes of talk time. It was more brick than beauty. But it had done what humanity had dreamed of for generations, broken the tether of place, and no longer would communication be bound by walls and cords. No longer would distance dictate the sound of a loved one's voice. In that moment, with the press of a button and the murmur of everyday words, the world shifted just slightly at first, almost imperceptibly toward a future where distance would not mean separation, where connection would dance freely across air and imagination. A call had been made, not just to another person, but to the stars themselves, a promise that one day the whole universe might fit within the palm of a hand, pockets full of worlds. From those early, clunky beginnings, the mobile phone began its slow, relentless evolution. It grew smaller, lighter, faster. From clamshell designs to candy bar shapes, from flashing green screens to glowing full-color displays, the mobile phone adapted to the pulse of the world it served. Soon, pockets everywhere carried tiny gateways to distant voices, distant places. Phones rang from the depths of backpacks, from the folds of jackets, from nightstands and dashboards. Messages zipped through invisible channels, carrying laughter, love, urgent news, and simple check-ins. I'm home. I miss you. I'm thinking of you. With each innovation, the mobile phone gathered more of the world inside itself. Cameras captured fleeting smiles. Maps unfolded routes across sprawling cities. Calendars guarded birthdays and meetings. Songs traveled in memory and melody, tucked safely behind glass screens. What began as a way to call became a way to live, a second heartbeat, pulsing with reminders of connection, with images of friends and families just a tap away. It was no longer simply a tool. It was a companion, a small, glowing tether to the people and dreams that shaped each life. The mobile phone transformed from an object of convenience into an artifact of intimacy. It carried not just numbers, but memories. Not just contacts, but whole constellations of meaning. Each pocket, each hand, each quiet vibrate in the dark became a reminder that no matter how large the world grew, no matter how far we roamed, a familiar voice, a beloved face, a cherished dream was always, somehow, within reach. The weight of always but connection, like light, cast shadows too. As the world grew closer, it also grew more demanding. The gentle distance that once allowed pauses, silences, moments of solitude began to shrink. Now, a call could find you on a crowded train. A message could interrupt a quiet dinner. A notification could stir you from sleep. The world, once distant and patient, now pressed close against every waking hour. The mobile phone, so small, carried a new kind of weight, not physical, but emotional. The expectation of constant availability tugged gently at the soul. The fear of missing out, of being left behind, crept into the corners of daily life. Moments once left to reflection were now filled with scrolling, swiping, answering. The intimacy that mobile phones offered sometimes slipped into a kind of restlessness, a feeling that one was never truly alone, yet never truly together either. Still, amid the noise and pressure, small, shining moments endured, a whispered goodnight from far away, a photograph sent to a distant friend, a voice message played softly in the hush before dawn. Connection, even with its complexities, remained a miracle. And the mobile phone remained a beacon of flawed but faithful reminder that, in the end, it is our longing for each other, our stubborn hope to bridge the spaces between us that continues to define our humanity, even in the weight of always. There is tenderness, a fragile thread that stretches through every call, every message, every quiet vibration of care, a universe. In our hands today, the mobile phone no longer feels like a marvel. It feels like an extension of the self so familiar it is almost invisible. Yet within its slender frame lies a universe, a library of every known song, a map of every explored place, a collection of every shared story, image, and dream.it carries. Love letters and grocery lists, emergency calls, and lullabies sung through thin speakers. It captures sunsets framed by trembling hands, and tears wiped away after midnight conversations. It links hearts across countries, across oceans, across years. Each soft glow from a screen is a lighthouse, a small beacon lighting the shorelines of human longing. Each ringtone, each buzz, each flashing notification is an echo of connection sought, of affection offered, of news borne across the invisible bridges between souls. The mobile phone hums quietly in bags, on desks, in pockets, and palms. Always ready, always near. It is a tool, yes, but it is also a vessel for memory, for hope, for the ceaseless weaving together of lives into the great, sprawling fabric of the human story. And so, even as the world rushes forward, even as technology shifts and reshapes itself, the heart of the mobile phone remains simple: to carry voices across distance, to cradle dreams within reach, to remind us, over and over again, that no one is ever truly alone. The universe, vast and wondrous, now rests within our hands, whispering, glowing, waiting for us to answer.